Hey, what's going on? Keith here from Sports Vibes TV, joined as always by my co-host Stephen Fox. Foxy man, how's everything with you?
All is well. Shout out to you. Shout out to the chat. Shout out to the SV Nation. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. Hope all is well. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing as good as I can be. Seeing that we just fresh off elimination from the playoffs. But like I said, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. If you tuned in, to everyone that celebrated, salute to you guys. I just finished celebrating with my mom, so that was a nice little pick me up. So now I'm here to chop it up and talk some Knicks with you guys. So Foxy, man, how'd you feel, man, after that final buzzer? Did you feel like we were actually gonna, find a way to get that victory against the Heat? Because it seemed like everything was falling in our favor. You had that foolish flagrant from Vincent that kind of put us in a position where we could take some points off the board. And then it was, just some, maybe it's a little bit of bad decision by Jalen Brunson if he had just found Hart open. Maybe we pull that game out. But how did you feel when the final buzzer sounded?
Disappointed, sad. Love Brunson, a warrior, but he couldn't do it by himself, and he literally had to. So, it was a great season. Never thought we'd get to the second round. It's a shame because I thought we had a really good chance if we could make it past Miami to play Boston. Now that they're there, I think we match up and played well against them. But hey, it was a tough loss, and we'll get into it. But it was a season that really, really achieved more than I ever thought.
Yeah, I hear you on that one, Foxy. I came into the season, I thought we were going to win around 46, 47 games. That was my prediction. And, I had a good feeling that we were going to at least be playoff bound. So this season was to see if we could get past where we were 2 years ago when we lost in the first round to the Hawks. And we were able to achieve that. So for me, the season in that regards was a success. It was just, a disappointing ending. And, for the most part, you get this far into the playoffs. You look at the road we would have had to take to, get to the finals. Any loss would have been, disappointing for the most part. So you just got to understand that, sometimes it's not your year. Sometimes the 50-50 balls, they go the other way. And you just got to give a kudos or give a shout out to the guys out there because, they didn't play. Some of them didn't play well in that final game. But, they gave their all. They balled out. They gave their heart for the majority of the season. You got to look at the way we ended up in the position we were in to be in the second round. A lot of hustle, a lot of guys, diving for loose balls, working their ass off behind the scenes on the court to put us in a position where we could at least be in the second round. So I wanted to give a big shout out to those guys. And you mentioned Jalen Brunson, man. Jalen Brunson, he made his mark this playoffs. We mentioned it in a previous stream. The playoffs is where you make your fame. And Jalen Brunson, he was backpack Brunson for a large portion of this playoffs. RJ Barrett, he did come up in big moments throughout the playoffs. But for the most part, Brunson was that consistent force for us. And I think if you look at the roster and you look at what this team can do moving forward to get better, Jalen Brunson, I think, is the nucleus of anything we do moving forward. He shows that he's one of the elite point guards in this league. And the fact that we are heading into an offseason where we're confident in what we have at the point guard position, I think is a new area for Knicks fans. So, shout out to the front office for that and bringing him here to lead this squad.
Yeah, everyone has great respect for Spoelstra and his post game. He just said he was stunned that Brunson wasn't not only an All-Star but All NBA, and that coming from a respected coach, and you and I and the SV Nation have felt the same way. He's not only been a class act on the court but a class act off the court, and we're blessed to have him. And like you said, I thought he was going to be good, but I'd be a huge liar if I'd say that I expected him to play this season the way he did. I thought he was going to be a very good Tyus Jones. I thought he was going to be a stabilizing force. He was going to be a smart player, but not to the level that he performed at this. And also what you talked about the playoffs, it was heroic because he did it on one leg, folks. A lot of the stuff that you saw getting backdoor, he couldn't make hard cuts on that ankle. His shooting was compromised because he couldn't get the lift off that ankle. And yet, forever we'll have visions of Willis Reed walking out, gimping out on that championship game. But there should be talk about Brunson, how heroic he was to play in pain, on a bad foot, on a bad ankle, on a bad hand, everything that he could to, he left it on the court for Knicks fans. And if you don't love Brunson, you got issues.
Yep, left it out there on the court. He was 14 of 22 from the field, 5 of 10 from the 3-point line. That's good enough for 41 points. And, for him to be a walking bucket like that, like you said, dealing with some injuries, not 100%. Of course, people say at this point in the season, no one's 100%. But you could tell that Jalen Brunson was definitely being affected by that injured ankle. And, if only he would have gotten a little bit more help, I think we could have definitely seen ourselves in that Eastern Conference Finals going up against the Celtics. And, I would have been comfortable in that matchup. But unfortunately, Julius Randle, he really didn't have it going for him in that Game 6. RJ Barrett, he had another stinker, unfortunately. He had a solid playoff performance, I think, in overall. But, in that Game 6, we really needed him to perform a lot better. 1 of 10 from the field, over 3 from the 3-point line, 11 points, 2 rebounds, 1 assist. It's a learning experience for him. That's what you want some of these young guys to take away from this experience. Quick, his postseason was cut short due to an ankle injury. Hopefully he can reflect on this and come back better next season. Quentin Grimes, I think Quentin Grimes, he could have played better, but I think a lot of it also wasn't really up to him. You look at what Tibbs was doing out there and his affection for Josh Hart. So Grimes maybe can look back at this playoff run and build upon it and come back better next season, depending on what this team does in the offseason. So, Foxy, how did you feel about some of those other starters out there? I know Jalen Brunson, you mentioned he had to do it all on his own, but, the reason he had to do it on his own was because he really wasn't getting much from some of his teammates. So how did you feel about RJ, Randle, Mitch, and Grimes' performance rounding out that starting 5?
Well, Grimes, a lot of people, why don't put Grimes in? I'll remember that air ball 3 at the end. Hey, I know he didn't get a lot of touches and stuff like that, and then his trainer came out and said some stuff, but I said it last stream, a quick way to put an end to that is hit your goddamn shots. He hit a shot and then he'd go, he played great on defense. He played very well against Butler. So I got to give him props. He showed great development this year, Grimes, but all of them when it counted. And we weren't asking them to play above. All we were asking for them to do is play like they played during the season. IQ and Grimes and RJ, just shoot from 3 and shoot the way you did during the season. We're not asking any more than that. And RJ did have a good playoffs, but he came up 0 when we really needed him. A 1, like you said, a stinker, 1 for 10, unacceptable. And he's going into his 5th season and he's kicking off a contract. So a big contract, and you left a lot to be desired. And Mitch, the same thing. Looked like he was laboring his running, and we signed him to a contract and we were expecting big things from him and elite rim protection and all these things, and get smoked, and it's a shame.
Yeah, but like I said, this could be a learning experience for someone like RJ Barrett. You like some of the things you heard from him following the loss, admitting that he really played bad, didn't play as good as he had wanted to play, and he's going to build upon that, next season. So this would be a pretty important offseason for the Knicks. Maybe they use RJ Barrett in some trade scenarios, which we'll get into a little bit later on in the live stream. But if this team decides to move forward with this, nucleus or this pairing of Brunson, RJ, and Julius Randle, I expect RJ Barrett to come back next season a lot better, based off some of the struggles he had to deal with in this postseason. The fact that, he was able to overcome some of the struggles he had during the regular season and at least help us in that first round get past a very difficult Cleveland Cavaliers team. So, fingers crossed that he can continue to build upon this. And if not, he'll be used as a trade trip moving forward to help build upon or build around a guy like Jalen Brunson. You mentioned Mitchell Robinson. I think this series wasn't the best series for him, but we saw how dominant he can be and how good he can be for this squad during that Cleveland Cavaliers series. So I think, in certain matchups, Mitchell Robinson can be attacked, and sometimes he can be a net negative for us. But then there's also other, matchups where he can be a dominant force out there and really change, the way a series plays out. So I think that might be more so trying to find another center to pair with Mitchell Robinson. Isaiah Hartenstein, he has provided some solid minutes, but you would prefer someone that has a little bit more versatility offensively when you compare him to Mitchell Robinson. I mean, comparing most centers to Mitchell Robinson, you'll see some versatility. There'll be some drastic differences in offensive versatility, but maybe someone that can stretch the court a little bit more. So that way, in a series like this, where you have Mitchell Robinson not be as effective, you can then throw a curveball at teams, put that guy out there to stretch the court out and change things up a little bit more. Hart, we signed him. We thought he was going to be that type of guy, but the outside shot really hasn't materialized, even though he has been able to find ways to be effective out there on the court, in other ways.
Did you say stretch the floor a little more? A lot more. The only thing he
remember,
the only thing Mitch stretched was my patience.
I hear you on that one. I hear you. So you're looking at the stats and seeing what some of these guys did throughout the playoffs. You can see Jalen Brunson, he had a phenomenal playoffs outside of the 3-point shooting, but for the most part, everything else been phenomenal. 27.8 points per game, 4.9 rebounds per game, 5.6 assists per game. He shot 47.4% from the field, and he shot 91.2% from the free throw line. And you got to love that because, since we've been covering the team, free throws shooting has been a pretty big struggle for this Knicks and for this team, and it's been a reason we've lost quite a few games throughout the years. So kudos to Brunson for knocking down his free throws. But you can see the rest of the starting lineup, man, for the most part, they struggled this playoff series. We mentioned it in the first series. We won that series, but we really didn't have a game where everything clicked and this team felt like it was firing on all cylinders like we were during the regular season. You can look to see Quentin Grimes. He only had 5.1 points per game, 2.8 rebounds per game, 1.4 assists per game, and 1.1 turnovers per game, while shooting a paltry 30.4% from the field and 24.3% from the three-point line. So Grimes is one of those young guys you hope is able to look at this series, look at last series, and kind of build upon it and come back a little bit more aggressive. If you look at some of the film, you felt like Quentin Grimes at times was a little bit too tentative with his shot selection, especially when he's out there to help spread the floor and to make teams pay when they overcommit to, either Jalen Brunson or Julius Randle. So hopefully he can go with that trainer that was, complaining about his minutes and his play time and start to work on building up his confidence a little bit more. So at least he's able to, make teams pay a little bit more for their mistakes in the postseason.
Yeah. But if you look at the assists per game and the turnovers for Grimes, RJ, Randle, and Mitch, pretty much 1-to-1 ratios. They're not making the players around them better. At least you see with Brunson and again on one ankle. So, but like you said, Grimes, and we'll get into it later, but he developed greatly from last year. He finished up the regular season. He shot like shit in the playoffs, but he was a blink away from 40% during the regular season. Like you said, we saw him add to his game, attacking the rim on, hard closeouts. We've seen beautiful pocket passes. Like you said, what we're hoping this year is this offseason, he comes back. He needs a midi game in the worst way. Too many times when the guys commit on that hard closeout and he blows past them, instead of taking a shot or going hard to the rim, he goes up in the air and he kicks it out. It's like, you were at the rim, man. Why didn't you take a shot? So we can't have him and Josh, all these guys that are afraid to shoot. You can't do it. You can only have one like that. So, but he showed growth, and that's important, And so Grimes is a tough guy, and like I said, he played dynamite D on Butler. I don't know if he got the credit that he should have, but like you said, it's a learning lesson. I think he'll come back, and hopefully, he looked banged up. He looked like he was a step slow. So I don't know if the season took its toll on his legs, and hurt that shoulder at the end, and a few other things. So, like you said, everyone has, but he looked a little compromised in terms of he looked beat up. So hopefully, he can come back fresh, add a few elements to his game that we desperately need, and then go from there.
Yeah, well, you can understand Grimes being a little bit beat up. He's been that guy that's been tasked with guarding opposing teams' best perimeter scorer, playmaker, etc. So you can understand that throughout the grind of a 82 game season plus the postseason, for him to be a little bit tired. But like I said,
a whole lot of time. The guys he was defending most of the time were much bigger than him. So that takes a huge, you're getting banged up going against 7'7", 6'8", 6'9" guys.
Yeah, and also he was doing such a good job on Jimmy Butler. It really is pretty upsetting to see Tibbs kind of sell out defensively and trying to get him some help over there, especially when he was doing a good job individually. Hart as well. We'll talk about Tibbs and some of his potential mistakes here in the playoffs, but let's talk about Julius Randle, the big elephant in the room. Julius Randle coming into this postseason, I think a lot of people felt like we were going to see a better version of him than we saw 2 years ago, because now we had the addition of a guy like Jalen Brunson to help alleviate some of that pressure. And I think we might have seen the opposite this postseason, that Julius Randle, either he wasn't right physically, which in that case, it really didn't make too much sense to have him out there, especially seeing how things happened at the end of the series. But if he was right, it seemed like the pressure was a little bit too much for him. You look at his stats, only averaged, 16.6 points per game, 8.3 rebounds per game, 3.6 assists per game, and 3.5 turnovers per game, while shooting 37.4% from the field and 25.8% from the three-point line. So, Foxy, how did you feel about Julius Randle's performance and the energy he exhibited game to game?
It's the crime of the century to have somebody who's all NBA 2 times in the last 3 years. Folks, do you know how hard that is? The elite talent you have to have to put up the stats to get those honors. And to see that all crash in the postseason, where I thought, he had that ankle injury and came back. I think he was fine. I think his issues were from the neck up. And the pressure and bad decision making, bad body language, bad everything that we'll get into later, but I just absolutely don't know how you could go forward with him.
Yeah, it was struggle. It was a struggle as a Knicks fan to see some of the effort or lack thereof that Julius Randle was out there playing with, especially with him supposed to be one of the leaders on his squad. So you would expect him to be doing a lot of the similar stuff that we see Jalen Brunson doing out there, being the emotional leader, saying the right things. At one point they were asking him, questions about the Heat wanting it more, and he said, hey, maybe they did want it more than us. And to me, that's not something you want your leader to be saying at a post-game press conference. And I think if you kind of looked at the way Julius Randle, just his facial expressions and things like, it just didn't seem like he wanted to be out there on the court at times. I was looking at some of the images, just trying to put together the thumbnail for this live stream. I was looking at pictures of Julius Randle, and walking into the arena for the game 6, it didn't look like Julius Randle wanted to be there, as if, he was dealing with some kind of anxiety or something like that. So it just seemed like his head wasn't in the right space. And, who knows, maybe he's seeing his position as being the best player on the team be usurped by Jalen Brunson and it's starting to get to him. I'm not 100% sure, but the front office, they're going to have to make a big decision this offseason. Do we continue to try and build around Brunson and Randle as a duo, or do we use Randle as a chip to bring in another player that might fit better with a guy like Jalen Brunson, especially if you decide that you're going to keep RJ long term, seeing that you saw some positive things from him this postseason. But, that's 2 postseason trips we've had with Julius Randle, and in both of them, he really hasn't shown anything that would warrant sticking with him long term. He's been solid in the regular season. I won't say, he performed, poorly this year during the regular season, but in the postseason, where this team is now looking to go deeper and deeper and deeper, we need him to be a much better player than we saw in this series.
Yeah. I don't see how that, folks, it's really crazy. As we know, it's a totally different game in the playoffs than regular season. And we've seen guys during the regular season, because of that difference of the, different defensive philosophy in the playoffs, more intensity and everything else, where during the regular season, their stats are phenomenal. And then when everybody clamps down, it's a different game. His style of play, I don't think, is conducive to winning. No matter, you give the minute you pass to Julius Randle on any possession, it becomes an ISO possession. And it doesn't, with 5 seconds left on the clock, when he's trying to do something, realizes nothing, he kicks it out, and somebody has to make a quick shot, that his game is just not conducive to winning basketball. It's great for stats during a regular season, but you throw doubles at him, get him scared. Spoelstra knew the triggers to get him going, and I think every coach. So, anxiety and mental issues are real serious. I'm never going to make fun of those things, and I feel it's a very painful thing. I'm sure he's ripping himself apart, but it's a chronic problem. I don't think he'll ever get past that. And if you're looking for a champion, one thing is being humane, another thing is running a corporation. If you want a chip, you want a championship caliber team, you want Brunson and the others to be the best they can be. You brought in Obi, with all of the things, we'll get into Obi and stuff like that. You see the ball movement. He's a rhythm vampire, like Randle, that he just ruins the rhythm of other people. He'll have great stats and everything else. But when it comes to other players and stuff like that, hey, if you see plays in the playoffs and you're like, what the hell? And then you're like going 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. Oh, he's finally back in the frame. He finally came back into the frame, Randle, after the play.
After the turnover that he caused.
But, multiple times in his body language and his hands, that's a cancer. And the only way, you got to cut out the cancer. Otherwise it spreads. And you have young guys, there's some speculation that, Obi was saying F you on a plane to, there was some skirmish on a plane where they got into it heavy, and I don't know if it's true or whatever. It's just speculation. But you have to ride with people like Brunson, and you got to make that. You got to focus on that. How you make Brunson the best he can be, and Randle can't make Brunson the best he could be.
Yeah, if it was just Randle performing poorly, I'd say, okay, maybe you bring in a new coach, put him in a different, situation, maybe get him rolling to the basket more, as opposed to him just being out there on the island trying to ISO with guys that can stay in front of him, like, Bam or Evan Mobley. But it's the lack of effort. And I just don't know even if you make a coaching change, if that'll change. And, I don't know what the root to that is, or why he behaves like that out there on the court, looking so dejected, after mistakes, whether it be his mistake or other teammates' mistakes, because you look at other players out there on the court and they're hustling after, bad plays and things like that. So I'm not sure what the root of it is, but this is now 3 years under Tibbs. And I think if you look at what Tibbs was able to do during the regular season and get this team to turn around, he did have his mistakes here in the postseason that we'll touch on, but I think the easiest thing might be for us to move off of Julius Randle, maybe bring in some other pieces to pair with Jalen Brunson and see if they can win under Tibbs, because I think those two as a duo, we're gonna find ourselves in this type of scenario again next season, whether it be Julius Randle looking like he's checked out or Tibbs not going with, Obi over Julius if it feels like it'll bring some more energy to a lineup.
Yeah, and we shouldn't put Tibbs in awkward situations. A lot of, get Randle out of there. We put Obi in there and we'll get into Obi, but Obi's a nightmare on defense. So it's like, he's in a situation. Do I take out this guy who's doing this and put in another guy? But I'm trying to win games here. I'm 65 years old.
You say Obi's terrible on defense, but it's not like Julius is much better when he's giving you that little effort.
I'm with you. I agree with you, but and whether you're like, what the hell is Julius taking that, that technical foul shot? You got guys like we just saw 91%, and I don't know if what are you doing? And he, you can see in his eyes. I want Randle to have confidence, so let him do his thing. He didn't put the line in the sand last year. He did bench Randle a couple times, so we'll get into later on report card and stuff like that. But Mary Shelley was the author of the book Frankenstein, and all monsters are created, and Tibbs had his hand in creating this monster. Should have nipped this shit in the bud last season. But now we have 3 years more on Randle's contract plus a 15% trade kicker. So
one positive though, he is extremely underpaid if you talk about regular season performance.
You could be unbelievably underpaid, but if you're a talent evaluator watching him in the playoffs and saying this guy's a freaking cancer, I don't give a shit if he makes $1 million a year. How am I supposed to bring that into my team?
Well, I'm just saying in that regard, even the trade kicker wouldn't factor in. But for a team that says, okay, maybe we can rehab his image, based on the production he gave during the regular season, even if you add that trade kicker, he'd still be under 30 mil, no?
I'm not disputing that, but it's just a bargain.
Foxy, we trying to make him look like a good asset. You're not doing us any favors right now.
Well, he's just a good ass. Forget that. Yeah, I don't really want to go into Randle too much more. I wish him mental health, but I don't know how you can root for a team if he's on it next year.
Kaiser Soze 718 says Randle got exposed. Trade him now. Almighty Finesse says trade both Randle and Obi. I wouldn't be shocked if we see both of them move this postseason. Maybe somebody in a deal that's returning fills in that power forward spot. Maybe we address it in free agency. I think we've got a tweet from Beg saying that we can spend about $12 million to bring in a player.
Wow. You're going to get something real special for $12 million.
Well, you never know who we trade Randle for. If we get somebody to trade and fill that power forward spot, then you're looking at $12 million to bring in a backup or something like that if we move Randle and Obi. So it really all depends. I think for the most part, this rotation just really needs one additional piece. And like most people are saying, it's probably going to come via trade. So any signing we do in free agency, I don't view that as bringing a starter on board. I think that's more so bringing in a depth piece.
Yep, I'm with you.
Let's see. Kaiser Soze once again says Randle should have been traded instead of extended. Rick's Nation says trade Fournier and Mitch, sign Brook Lopez. To me, I heard a very troubling quote from Evan Fournier. Everybody was petitioning for Evan Fournier to get some minutes to go out there and, be that shooter that this team desperately needed. Well, if you heard some of the quotes from him, he said his season ended a long time ago. So if he was checked out like that, then that means he was no help to the Knicks. Because I don't think if you put him in a situation where he's already mentally checked out on the team, that he would have given us anything out there. He already was going to be a net negative defensively. And then offensively, I don't really see him lighting it up out there if he's checked out.
I think they're human, and I think that was a self-defense mechanism saying, hey, I played in this league X amount of years. I could light it up 3. I have But Dan, I've been exiled to Siberia. So I think emotionally he had to check out. Otherwise, it's abusive saying, hey, man, why are they doing this to me? Why are they doing this to me? Give me an opportunity. Give me an opportunity. I am like, no chance in hell am I going to get in there. And when I do, someone's going to have to be injured or something where he'll even look in my way. But so it was a bad, first of all, and this is on the front office. He should have never been signed in the fucking first place. He's not a Tibbs player. He was not a Tibbs player. I've been saying all damn season, he shouldn't have been here. We would have been a lot better off just having Alec Burks, a lifetime 40%, the last X amount of years, 40% from three. He's great in the locker room. He's versatile. They should have never signed Fournier in the first place. He put Tibbs in a hard position, no different than they did with Cam, giving him players that don't reflect his coaching schemes, his philosophy, etc. So Fournier coming out with those comments, but it's another guy. Just get him off the goddamn team. Let's get rid of that contract and see if we can, like you were saying, with manipulate with us not picking up the option on D Rose. Hopefully, we get rid of Fournier. Let's use those monies and try to better ourselves.
There's no hopefully. Fournier's out of here. You can't say those type of things to be brought back.
I agree, but I agree. But you know what? He wants to say that because who the hell would want to endure another year on the bench like that? If you're a pro, especially at this age and stuff, you don't know, this is your prime years. I gave up 2 freaking years of my career for the Knicks and didn't get a chance. So I'm not a Fournier fan at all. I never ever wanted him here. But, as if you work your whole life to make it to the pros and then somebody, you're not getting any run and you're making $18 million a year, you had to have some value for a team to sign you to an $18 million a year contract.
That or the people negotiating the contracts didn't really know what they were doing.
Yep.
Could be either or.
We'll get into our front office grades a little later.
Yep. So now we talked about the playoffs and how the starters performed. Let's look at the bench. You talked about free agency. Josh Hart, he'll probably be declining his option, and he'll be hitting free agency, looking for a new deal. How did you feel about his performance during his time here with the New York Knicks? I mean, during the regular season, he couldn't miss. He was really a major spark plug for us off the bench, and then in the playoffs, kind of looked like he was a crutch for Tom Thibodeau, a guy that Tibbs maybe went to a little bit too often in the playoffs. So how did you feel about Josh Hart's time here with the Knicks? And if you had to re-sign him, would you? And how much would you pay him?
I think Josh Hart was a really good addition to the team. Shout out to JD. JD and I had a great discussion about it. He's a glue guy. He has to have guys around him, his type of play, his, hustle and his offensive rebounding and his coast to coast, he's great at the rim and stuff like that. He's very valuable if he has the right players around him. But if you're Tibbs, if you put ask a glue guy to do something more than being a glue guy, you're going to take away his whole game. And that's what happened in the playoffs. That's not who Josh Hart is. And we knew, you and I talked, that 3-point shooting was going to come down to reality real soon. His career, you have to go with the numbers. It's trend analysis, not isolated data points. And his trend is being a touch below a league average 3-point shooter, but dynamite in the 2-point range, getting to the rim, dynamite on D, and his plus minus is off the chart. He's a winning player. So that was a good thing, but I think they asked him to, with IQ going down and a few other things going on with Grimes, and we asked more than what Josh Hart's supposed to be, use the analogy of Trevor Ariza. He's a really good glue guy, and when he went to the Lakers and had those guys around him, he was incredibly valuable. If he asked Ariza to be a star and be, a starter and do others, that wasn't, you're asking more than his talent allows.
So then if you had to offer him a contract, average annual value, how much would you offer him?
I know this is going to be really a harsh take on some people. with all his value and stuff, he's a reluctant 3-point shooter, and he showed that he had issues defending speed. I will not sign him to a crazy contract. This guy wants $20 million. Let him walk. I don't mean anything, but I have no problem with a 3-year, $45 million, 3-year, $48 million contract. You have to be realistic. The guy's afraid to shoot. You can't have a guy, like I said, you can only have a guy like that. His focus is to make the guys around him better. So if you have the right team, that's awesome. But he's never he's 6 years in the league. You think he's not going to get scared to still be shooting? This is who he is. So I think we just have to be realistic that we give him a good contract. He's a valuable player, but don't get stupid. Don't pay him a contract for a guy. And like we said, we saw him on certain things. He has issues dealing with speed. So he's not a guy that, you always, from talent value, he can guard 1 to 4 and stuff like that. He can't guard once. He can't. He's really valuable in certain things. So I think, you pay him commensurate, Norman Powell. He doesn't shoot like Norman Powell. So he shouldn't get Norman Powell money. So he's really, really valuable, and I hope we retain him, but at the right price.
Yeah, I agree with you. Right around that 15 to, I would go maybe as high as 16 and a half mil per year, or around a 2 or 3 year deal. He probably is going to look for a 3-year deal, try to get as much security as possible. I think, like you said, he was a solid contributor. He's definitely someone that can contribute to winning basketball. He does all the little things that you need when you want to field a championship contender. It's just like you said, there are some limitations that kind of stop you from looking at him as someone that you're gonna throw out there for big minutes, or give a starter's role to. So I think him continuing to come off the bench at that price, I think is perfect. He fits in perfectly with that second unit. I think some of the issues started to arise once he got taken from that second unit and elevated to the starting lineup. That second unit really kind of lost its spark, and it really was difficult for us to kind of recapture that. So for me personally, you look at what he's able to do out there: 10.4 points per game, 7.4 rebounds per game, 2.2 assists per game, shooting 47% or 47.9% from the field. But you mentioned the 3-point shooting, body at best this playoff series. In this playoffs, he shot 31.3% from the 3-point line and a paltry 63.6% from the charity stripe. So some of his issues really did rise to the surface during the playoffs. And that's what you kind of look at when you assess a team. How are they performing in the playoffs? Because that's when you have opposing teams kind of target players and try to force them into their weakness. And, we saw a lot of that with Josh Hart, especially in this matchup against the Heat and Eric Spoelstra. So great acquisition by this front office. They just can't go crazy trying to resign him in terms of contract value just because he's great friends with Jalen Brunson. You have to do it based on what he's able to contribute. And I think of a deal right around 15 to 16.5 million per year gives him a nice enough of a salary bump to warrant him turning down that option year, and also gives him enough security long term based on his role and position for this squad.
I think you captured it beautifully last stream, my friend, when you said he's a really
Say that one more time, Foxy. You broke up?
That he's a really good role player.
Yeah.
Let's just keep it real.
Mm-hmm.
That he's dynamite like that, but asking above that, that's not who he is. And he's on. This is his 4th team.
And again, there's nothing wrong with him being a really good role player. Everybody can't be elite.
Exactly. But to pay his salary, it has to be commensurate with his talent. You don't want to give a guy $25 million for being a solid role player.
Mm-hmm. And speaking about whether guys are role players, starting level players, let's talk about Emmanuel Quickley. His postseason was cut a little bit short. Not a little bit. It was cut prematurely because of an ankle injury off of a dirty play by a Heat player, but we won't get into that. But up until then, he really wasn't the Emmanuel Quickley we saw in the second half of the regular season. So I think it puts the Knicks in a real tough spot right now, because if Emmanuel Quickley were to come out and play at the same level that we saw towards the end of the season, I think the Knicks would have had to extend him a very nice contract extension, because they shouldn't risk him hitting the open market and potentially getting a crazy deal in free agency. But now with him struggling in the playoffs, and you look at this offseason as being one where the team could go crazy to try and pair some more talent with Jalen Brunson, the front office now has to assess whether or not Emmanuel Quickley is someone that they should extend this offseason, is someone that they should include in the deal to get better, or if they should allow him to continue to play out the contract and allow him to hit next offseason without a contract extension. So, Foxy, how do you think the Knicks should move forward with Emmanuel Quickley based on his play this playoffs?
Saw a lot of growth over the last few years. It's a real shame how he played in the playoffs prior to the injury. We've seen guys go into shooting slumps, but that average, again, the assist to turnover ratio, 1 to 1.1. Yeah, I've said it from day one. I never looked at him as a point guard. I look at him as a shooting guard as a secondary playmaker. That's where I think he's best. I think if you put him in a role replacing a Brunson or in that role as a point guard, he has to think too much. It's not something natural to him. There's certain guys you've seen, that see the floor, that's who they are. That's not who Quickley is. He was second in, I see him as a dynamite microwave coming off the bench. So we've seen his growth. I'm still frustrated that he still has never, coming out of college and out of Tibbs' mouth that he's a sniper. Thank God his first 2 years, 39% from the floor. And, but he's still, he hit over 40 some odd percent this year during the regular season, but he still has never broken 40% from three. And that frustrates the hell out of me. I've said for a long time, I can't see him in half court sets, running a team in half court sets. And it showed up in the playoffs, and he looked scared. He looked shook. We talked about it. And, the playoffs show who are the pit bulls, and, there's an element of Quickley. He's a poser. I'm not really into guys that, do interviews with sunglasses on playing Hollywood. I'm much more of a Jalen Brunson type of dude. I'm not into guys that are shooting like shit and then hit a three and look at their bench and they go like that. That's, you hit 5 threes and do that shit. So, but he came up real soft in the playoffs, man. And that's a concern, but he's a young player. Like you said, it's a good experience. And we'll see what he's made of next year. And there's certain things, again, that we want to see more middies in his game. We want to see more consistent. We want to see him break 40% from three. But I really think he's best as that 6-man off the bench microwave. Don't ask him to run a team. Just shoot. Have somebody break down, kick it out to him, catch and shoot, or the stuff that he does. And part of that's on Tibbs. They should know who he is already. Don't put him in an optimal situation so he could be the best he can be. He's not a floor general. We desperately need a second team floor general.
Yeah, I wouldn't be against bringing in someone to kind of take over that point guard spot and allow Emmanuel Quickley to focus as that scoring option. But in the playoffs, I really didn't understand. It was mind blowing to see him struggle so much, because one of the things that we loved about Emmanuel Quickley, running that second unit, is that he didn't have too many turnovers. He was extremely efficient in terms of not giving the ball up and, making some smart plays. But you see in the playoffs, he had a 1 assist per game to 1.1 turnover ratio. And that's uncharacteristic of Emmanuel Quickley. So to me, he's going to have to figure out, why he struggled so much under some of the bright lights. To me, I think he'll be able to overcome some of these early struggles in his playoff career, and he'll be able to bounce back. But for this playoffs, he averaged 9 points per game, 1.6 rebounds per game. I mentioned the 1 assist to 1.1 turnovers. He shot 34.8% from the field and a paltry 24.3% from the 3-point line. He did shoot 85% from the charity stripe, which, is good compared to other players. But Emmanuel Quickley coming into the league, his free throw shooting was one of the big talking points, and how he was able to shoot close to 90% from the charity stripe. So even that is a bit of a regression, I guess, in terms of Emmanuel Quickley and his play. So I expect him to bounce
back. And his defense.
Yep.
He didn't play elite defense in the playoffs.
As well. So, I think earlier on in the playoffs, he played solid defense, so you at least were okay. Not okay, but you kind of understood some of the offensive struggles, especially since we were still winning games. But I think in this, towards the end, leading up to the injury, the defense was kind of lacking. So that is another point that has to be mentioned. So salute to you for that, Foxy.
Hey, he's a young guy, and we'll see. But it's another player that you just don't want to overpay for. We've made major mistakes this front office, giving Julius a contract a year or too early. We made major mistakes giving RJ a contract too early. Don't do it to him, man. You'll learn, learn and let him earn that contract.
So if you were to give him a contract, average annual value, what would it be?
More like the Norman Powell, $18 million a year, 4 years, $72 million.
Yep, that sounds reasonable. I do right around that, 16 to 18. Also, we got a super chat from Buzzer Beater. Thank you for the continuous support. It says, Fournier said that due to the way Tibbs treated Cam and Kimba, why give a damn about a coach treats his players like that? Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to you as well, Buzzer Beater. So, yeah, I mean, I view that as as Evan trying to force himself out of New York with those type of comments. So, yeah, maybe him trying to get ahead of the media, because who knows what stories they'll run with at the end of the season. So I think he spoke like that because he's pretty much done with us, same way we're done with him. So hopefully they find a way to move on from him, because I just don't see how the relationship can continue.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's see what we got going on.
Want to do a few shout outs?
Yeah, we'll give a shout out. Ace of Spades, as we surveyed, it depends on who comes back in the trade. If we get Jeremy Grant or KP, that they would start. Start over who? Grimes?
No, I could see Jeremy Grant kicking RJ to the 2 and Jeremy Grant at the 3. Or, God willing, get rid of Randle and have him at the 4.
Yeah. I see AA Mafia as a Spider trade value cheaper now with less years. Do we go get him now or wait until he's a free agent? I don't think Cleveland's going to move on from Spider, especially seeing what they gave, because they're not going to be able to recoup the same amount of assets. And if we were going to go after Donovan, I think it would be best to just try and sign him in free agency, as opposed to giving up pieces that you would want to grow around the duo of Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell. But even to me, I don't know how I feel about that pairing. You've got two undersized guards.
You can't have that pairing.
That can be attacked defensively. I just don't know. But if we were going to get Spider, we would do a free agency, I believe.
Yeah, I don't see how you can sign Donovan Mitchell having 2-6-1 backcourt. Brunson gets lit up. Donovan, hey, he's I said it, he's an incredible on offense and invisible on defense. He brought to Cleveland exactly what he did with Utah. He just, he's good, but you can't bring him, take him to the promised land.
Yep. Just, let's see. I'm going to put on screen real quick. I want to give a shout out once again to our starters. Let's see how they performed in the season. Brunson, once again, he stepped up big time. He upped his points per game because he's averaged, 27 points per game in the regular season. He averaged 24 in the regular season. So that was
in the playoffs, 27, yeah.
Yep, so that was a nice bump for production from him. For the season, he shot 49.1% from the field, 41.6% from the three-point line. Some other big shout-outs. You got Julius Randle, 25 and 10. So kudos to him for that. Shot 45.9% from the field and 34.3% from the three-point line. Mitchell Robinson, one of these days, man, he's going to average himself a double-double. I believe it. In my heart of hearts, I believe one of these days he'll average himself a double-double. Not yet, but one day soon. He averaged 7.4 points per game, 9.4 rebounds per game, shot 67.1% from the field, and the free throw shooting. He knocked some clutch ones down. What was it in game 5? So, shout out to him for that. But that's definitely something he has to work on this offseason. He's talking about getting the ball and be, allowed to do more on offense. Well, what are you going to do when teams foul you if you start getting those offensive moves off? You got to knock down your free throw shot. So hopefully that's something he works on this offseason.
Yeah. That and maybe getting an offensive game and maybe getting some stamina and maybe, I'm not a big Mitch fan. Folks know that I did not want to re-sign him at all. So I really think if we had drafted Jalen Durant, he would have been just as, better defensively against Bam than Mitch. That is for damn sure. But the ceiling of him, Mark Williams, Walker Kessler, hey, you and I said they paid Mitch $12 million more than Robert Williams. They exceeded the contract that we thought he should have gotten. And every time you look at him, he looks like he's laboring, whether it's a hip, whether it's a shoulder, whether it's a knee. He's on the ground. He's exhausting. I'm not a Mitch fan.
Yeah, Foxy, I know. You and Inf, two guys that aren't necessarily big on Mitchell Robinson and where he can contribute. But I like what he can do for us. I think if you see the Cleveland Cavaliers series, this is something that you can look at as an example. He was a beast in that series against 2 7-footers. So I think in terms of matchups, there are some matchups where it's not ideal for Mitch, an agile guy like Bam, who's a little bit more of a face-up threat. So those type of guys do give Mitch a little bit more issues. But for the most part, I think with what we ask Mitch to do, he does do a solid job. So, I like Mitch as our starting center. I'd be open to a move if we were able to make a massive upgrade. But if it's just going to be a lateral trade, a lateral move that's going to bring in somebody that's going to give you this similar production, but just at a higher cost, like a Miles Turner, I'd stick with Mitch.
Well, you just talked about Fournier, so I guess you don't mind those tweets during the year, those stupid tweets that'll never end. That's who he is. That what are you talking about? Whether his offensive game and all these cryptic things, he's a goof. I'm not big on goofs when you're trying to win. You be serious about winning. And yeah, he comes up monsters against soft teams. So he was a monster against a soft Allen, but when he plays a real dog, you got Spoelstra played him, man. He's like, bam, get him in foul trouble. Take you about 5-7 minutes, get him 2 fouls, whatever. And yeah, Mitch I just don't have any respect for somebody who's in the game 5 years, hasn't developed anything from the offense. And yeah, he hit some clutch shots, but anybody that bets on him to hit clutch shots with that shooting form, I have more respect for Jericho Sims in 1 year, seeing what he did with his foul shooting form and technique, having an arc on the ball, letting the ball, that 400-mile-per-hour line drive. It's lunacy. How with coaches on the Knicks and everything else, he's I love him.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the tweets myself, but when you look at what some of these other guys are out here doing on social media, a couple of childish tweets are the least of I think the Knicks' concern, as long as he's going out there and still finding ways to be dominant. I mean,
there's something positive about his tweets. He's not brandishing a gun.
Yeah, exactly. He's not out here flashing weapons on social media. But I mean, if you look at the Knicks and what made us so good this season, it was the offensive rebounding, and I think Mitchell Robinson is
elite.
Elite at it, and one of the biggest reasons we were so great at offensive rebounding. So I think if you look at our success and what made us successful, you have to point at Mitchell Robinson for that. So I think he's not the perfect center. There are some issues in his game, whether it be him not being able to do too much offensively, but with what he's asked to do in this Tom Thibodeau offense, I think he's a great fit. And if we do move on from a guy like Tom Thibodeau and we bring in a coach that wants the center to do a little bit more offensively, at that point, I'd be open to moving off of Mitchell Robinson. But I think right now with what he's asked to do, he does a phenomenal job.
Well, Hey, he's an elite rebounder, but elite rim protection bullshit. Did you see Bam? Did you see Kyle Lowry? Hey man, I wanted him to be the next Mutombo. Like, don't bring that shit into the paint. I'll be knocking that around. Yeah, he gets his blocks, but he's not somebody like, don't even go there, man.
I mean, there's moments, when people are able to get into the paint. He can't lock it up 100% of the time, especially when he's asked to help so frequently, So, yeah, people are going to get to the paint at times and score. But I think for the most part, if you watch how guys attack the rim and are a little bit tentative to put up shots, I think a big reason of that is Mitchell Robinson. So, I'm sure you can find moments where guys are willing to try him. But for the most part, you see a lot of guys second guess, their forays into the paint.
No doubt.
We got a super chat from Buzzer Beater as well. He says, Mitch still cannot catch a pass under the rim. That's enough.
Fans.
Yeah, all our centers for the most part can't catch passes. Whether we go back to Nerlens Noel, even Hart at times can't catch a few passes. It's like, oh yeah, what's going on here?
Yeah, but Josh Hart, a few of them, what the hell are you thinking even passing to them? Why would you even have it in your being to even pass it to these guys and then pass it to them at their waist? It's fundamentals again. You don't, you make a 7-footer 6'5" when you do that. So that's just, bad hands, and bad IQ.
Yep. JJ agrees with you, Foxy. He says Mitch has awful hands.
Yeah, JJ's awesome, man. JJ, thanks for all your support, man, and all your insight. I love your takes. You're really good people.
Hit him up, says trade Grimes, RJ, and Randy.
They're totally replaceable. There's no doubt about that.
CAA Mafia says Mitch is only a good offensive rebounder because we can't shoot. Give a shoot, and he won't be an offensive rebound.
Yo.
D Rebo says our offense is so trash. Facts, and we've been saying that for 3 years, man. We've really got to have Tibbs bring in the offensive coordinator. If Tibbs is going to stay here, he's got to bring in somebody to run the offense.
You know what, though? It's again on the front office. If I'm taking a step back and I'm looking at an RJ and I'm looking at a Randle, I'm saying, Jesus Christ, we got to get ourselves a stretch 5, man. We can't have our guy hanging out there congesting that paint. That's where they live, these guys. Get somebody out at the perimeter, and if that center wants to cheat, like Brook Lopez or, meeting just somebody who could drain a 3 like that, it changes everything for everyone. So for them not opening up, realizing that RJ, the type of game that RJ and Randle has, that having a center like Mitch kills you. It kills the spacing, and it takes away from their game. Get somebody out, who can, at least hit a midi, a pick and pop or whatever. But him just being there, it just creates congestion. And RJ has a lot to work on. My God. But 105 blocks 2 years ago, 94 and 73 games. His shot blocked again 94 times this year. Part of that is IQ, and part of it is a bad scheme, man. Get the goddamn center out. Get a different type of scheme. If you have 2 guys on your roster that is your foundation, that whose game is driving like that.
Hey, Foxy. Also got another comment from Ace of Spades. Says Johnny Bryant is already there. Use him for offense. But that's the thing. I don't think anybody knows what Johnny Bryant's preferences are when it comes to the X and O's, as opposed to what type of offense he likes to run, what type of defense he likes to, or schemes he likes to use. We don't really know. We just know him as some guy that's good, working with players in terms of developing their individual skills, right? I don't think anybody knows if Johnny Bryant is head coach what his game plan is.
But the reality is, other than Brunson, what the hell offensive scheme are you going to run with the people on the team? Meaning, RJ's game is you give the ball to RJ, dribble, goes left. If he goes right, he'll spin and go left again, drive into the hole. Obviously, he's a terrible. You can't shoot from 3. And I said, folks, I did all this research. There's never been a player who made an all-star team who has the shooting stats of RJ Barrett in his first 4 years at the rim, short mid-range, long mid-range, 3, corner 3. He can't shoot. His game is getting to the hole. And how many bunnies did he miss when we needed him? So if you can't, you're elite at getting to the hole, but you can't finish. I knew another player like that named Elfrid Payton. You know, that, RJ's at a much different level than Elfrid Payton, no doubt. But his game is limited. If you can't shoot consistently at league average, and you're slow Jay, so from an offensive standpoint, what scheme? You know what Brunson's going to be able to deliver. You give the ball to Randle, it's ISO. So what offensive scheme are you going to be able to run with those guys? God forbid Tibbs or anybody runs a screen so Grimes twice a quarter could have curls to shoot a three.
Well, that's the offensive scheme right there, Foxy. You just answered your question. Start doing some more off-ball action. Maybe, have Brunson operate a little bit more as a screener. That way you can get some mismatches on Julius Randle, make his life a little bit easier so he's not attacking guys like Bam or Evan Mobley and ISO. There's certain things you can do that can work within the skill set of our guys. It's just Tibbs isn't really, using them.
I know, but I think the scheme is very limited by the roster that we have.
Well, the roster is limited based on the head coach we have. We just mentioned it. We
have the coach is responsible for coaching the guys that the front office gives them.
Well, no, we just mentioned it. The front office tried to give him some guys that kind of did a little bit, things that are contrary to what Tibbs is, stuck in his ways. They brought in Kemba. They brought in Evan.
Kemba was a one-leg guy that should have never been signed.
True, but we said they shouldn't have signed him and Evan because they didn't fit Tibbs' scheme. I think the issue, defense, but even offensively, there's certain guys that we could bring in, but we don't know if they would fit with Tibbs defensively. So it kind of hampers what we're able to do in terms of roster construction because whoever we bring in has to fit what Tibbs is trying to do offensively and defensively. So that's why I think we're limited based on the head coach we have because we can't bring in someone and have a head coach say, okay, this is what this guy can do well. Let's see if you can draw something up to get the most out of him while he's out there on the court. So I think that's why we're limited more so by the front office, by the head coach than say the front office. Because the front office is willing to take some gambles. They brought in Cam. That was a gamble. That was a reach.
It was a bad gamble. You don't bring in somebody with a bad motor.
It was a bad gamble, but it really didn't cost us much outside of flipping, Kevin Knox and, a first that may not materialize.
What do you mean it didn't cost us much? We got Josh Hart for Cam and the 23rd pick in this draft. That's a cost to me, man.
That is a cost, but it's not something that you would say, okay, we have ruined the franchise.
No, that I agree.
It's not a move where you can't undo it. I mean, we brought in Cam and we still found a way to move Cam to bring in a guy like Josh Hart who has a long-term future with this squad. So if you look at it, to me, I don't think it cost us enough to where I would say, all right, that was a gamble that they shouldn't have even, considered.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, we got to see. We talked about development Grimes. Next year is going to be important. When Grimes is hitting 40% and we've seen certain, we had visions of grandeur of maybe he can become, a baby Clay. And I'm getting scared the reality is it'll be more of a Damian Dotson.
I don't know if we're going that far, Foxy. I mean, he can knock down the three. I just think, first time really in that environment, he probably needed to feel it out a little bit before he can come back and actually perform a little bit better next time we're there. I don't think he's going to be Damian Dotson level. He's a solid defender.
We'll find out next year, and I hope I'm wrong. And I'm not saying that, but, he came up real empty in the freaking playoffs, man. And his shot just wasn't consistent all season long. He came on toward the end of the season, but...
Yeah, him and Quick.
But it was really disappointing.
Yeah. Also, he did deal with the shoulder injury, so that I think can affect his shooting as well. So that is something we gotta factor into the equation.
Yeah. Shout out to my friend Jay.
Salute.
Janine is in the chat saying bring in a stretch five would open the offense, but if they lack defense, you're right. We got to get a little both, Janine. So I adore you, Janine, if I haven't told you lately.
CAA Mafia says Grimes can be traded too. We won't regret it. Trust me. I'm open to including Grimes in a deal if it brings in a piece that'll fit next to Jalen Brunson. I'm not one of those guys that was in the front office saying that Grimes is untouchable. Grimes can be moved in the right deal. There aren't too many players on this roster right now that I say are untouchable in terms of trades. It's just Brunson, and that's it. Everybody else can be shipped.
How many times have you heard me say this team from the last year's draft on? We're in desperate need of an infusion of athleticism. Somebody that is really athletic, and he's just an average athlete, Grimes. We talked about it. You look at Brunson, you look at RJ, you look at Grimes, you look at Randle. Where's that elite athleticism? We need somebody, man, with speed. Speed, there's a reason of the old adage, speed kills.
I mean, we'll have our fingers crossed on Tuesday. Hopefully, we'll be getting the draft pick and we can add some athleticism that way.
Your mouth to God's ears, my friend.
Hope and pray. What is it, like a 19% chance that we end up with the pick at 11?
Yeah, so we'll see. I see Randrock said, "Hey, Fox, I thought you said iHeart was a stretch 5. Play back the stuff." I never, ever said that. Ever. The stats from, I laughed at the stats from the Clippers saying, yeah, that's like saying I shot 60%, from the thing, and I only took 4 shots. His numbers last year said, Randrock, thank you for your support, but get your shit right.
So speaking of iHeart, let's look at what the bench did for the season. You can see stretch 5 really wasn't in the cards for iHeart. He shot 21.6% from the 3-point line. But I think overall, as the season progressed, we started to see what iHeart can do as a contributor at that backup 5 position. It was very tough. Wasn't a lockdown interior defender, but he did make life difficult for guys that were trying to attack. He had some nice big time blocks at the rim that were, really big in terms of momentum building for the squad. What I want next season, though, if he's still here and he's not moved in the deal, is let's feature him a little bit more with that second unit as a passer. You know what I mean? Tibbs had Joakim Noah. There were times when Joakim Noah operated out of that, post area as a passer. Let's see if iHeart can do a little bit more of that. I think it'll really help us get some better looks. If we also add some more shooting to that second unit, I think it'll really open things up for that second unit. So I think that's one thing I'm going to be looking at next season to see if they start to utilize iHeart a little bit more offensively.
He's a really good backup. I totally agree with you. I'd love to see him in the pinch post as, Joakim Noah, using cutters, like whether it's a Grimes, whether a Josh Hart, cutting to the rim, utilize those skills. But I think that I always have problems with players when people talk about him and the first thing they say is, I love his effort. I love effort too, but you got to have other skills. And he's a very good, but I think he's expendable. We need a stretch 5. You want to stick with Mitch? I'm down with that. But the second option has to be a stretch 5.
Yep. I agree with you, Foxy. Definitely. Or maybe have iHeart go to the gym and see if he can start working on that 3-point shot. See if he can come back with a better shooting performance next season. Remains to be seen. Talked about
Brook Lopez. He improved that shot. So let's see if he could do that. He's real young, man. I think he's 25 years old. So he's a young boy. He's a young pup still, but and he showed other, but we need athleticism. He desperately doesn't have it. So, Noah Clown, there's guys in the draft who, that are projects, but we need somebody who's 6'10", 6'11", who's springy, who can, much more of a shot blocker, much more intimidating, that has much more, like you said, from a Mitch perspective, like, yo, I'm not going to go there. That dude, nobody's afraid of Hartenstein. Yeah, he gets blocks and stuff, but I think there guys who surprise me, still 7 feet. But he's a very solid backup player.
Yep, solid backup. And what about Obi? Now, Obi's in a real tough spot because Julius Randle, ahead of him in the depth chart, Julius Randle had an All-NBA regular season. But for someone that has struggled as much as Randle has in the postseason, it could potentially open up a scenario where Randle is moved. So do you think if Randle was moved, they would elevate a guy like Obi Toppin into that starting lineup, or do you think they would shop Obi around as well to see if they can bring in some more pieces to pair with Jalen Brunson? We've already seen Obi get linked to teams like the Indiana Pacers and things like that. So with what you've seen from Obi so far throughout this season and postseason, do you think Obi has a long-term fit with this squad, or do you think he may be moved in this offseason?
If there's any truth to the gossip I heard behind the scenes, that like 3 or 4 times behind the scenes this year, he said "F you" to Tibbs. I don't know if that he was playing the Fournier game to get me the hell out of here because of Julius. I want some playing time, but he's soft. He's soft. He's the dreaded. I said the day, he should never, ever been drafted. Should have been Halliburton, should have been Devin Vassell. But you had Julius, and then you got Obi. Then the first thing you do is trade Julius. But you bring in, at that pick, you bring in another power forward when it's a wing league. Obi, and Obi is a guy that he'll go to another team. He can absolutely be a 20-point scorer, but he's totally dependent on somebody to make him the best he can be. So giving him lobs, you saw he's not somebody who's going to be creating his own shot. You saw him on rebounds and stuff like that, or lack of rebounds. He should get an endorsement from Depends because he's Mr. Leak Out. He's just not my type of player. He's a poser, and I like dogs. And I think he's totally replaceable. And I think we need to move on from Obi. And like I said, nor would I be surprised Obi scores 20 points someplace else. I just don't see Obi. When you're around Obi, as long as Obi you have to be an idiot to take a step back and say, wow, look at Kevin Knox. The guy can shoot threes. Why doesn't he get on the court? Keeps missing his defensive assignments. Cam, wow, man, in practice and everything, he's prototyped. Why isn't he getting more reps? Defensive assignments. Obi continually misses defensive assignments. So, on a crummy team, he'll score 20. I could see him averaging 23 points a game, but on a team that's going to be, I don't think he'll ever be able to play the defense of a winning team at the 4. He's not strong enough. He's not, but he has great speed north-south, but he's not a lateral. He's high-hipped. Doesn't have great lateral movement to cover speed like that. And like we said, he can't create his own shot. So Obi's totally replaceable in my book, man. But he's today's NBA. He could put up points, but there's a lot more to being a winning player than just scoring points. Doesn't rebound. He doesn't block shots. He doesn't have assists. Look at that. Final season, 1 assist to point. So he doesn't make the players around him better. And yeah, I'm glad people like his exciting dunks on transition. But soft.
Yeah, I can definitely see them moving on from Obi in the offseason, especially if they do decide to double down and continue to build around Julius Randle, because I just think, Obi, the front office might not be willing to sit there and listen to what the fan base is going to go on with. If you have Julius Randle starting again, Obi Toppin coming off the bench, and Julius Randle continues to struggle like we saw this season, especially when, this postseason for Julius Randle, especially when Obi Toppin is going to be due for a contract extension pretty soon. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be looking for some decent money in free agency, and he's not going to be happy if he's not going to be able to see the time on the court in order to put himself in the best position. So even if the Knicks don't want to move on from Obi Toppin per se and want to decide to bring it back and run it back with the same squad, I think Obi Toppin and his representatives may try to force the issue behind the scenes. I mean, we've seen other players do it. I mean, Cam Reddish, for the most part, he did it behind the scenes. Kevin Knox, he did it behind the scenes, and they ended up getting traded for each other. So we've seen other young players around the league do similar things and end up getting moved. So I think if Obi Toppin isn't happy with his role with the New York Knicks, especially when he's about to be entering a free agency situation, I could definitely see him forcing the issue to try and get a better opportunity elsewhere.
Shout out again to our guy JJ. There hasn't been a pump fake Obi hasn't fallen for. I love you, JJ, because it's so visual to watch a game and just see the visual of Obi on a hard closeout go flying up in the air with all that athleticism right past the player. And then the guy does the fake. He flies by him and then open three.
Yeah. Also, we got a contribution from Ace of Spade. Thank you for the $1. I guess it's a super sticker. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see what we got going on in chat. CAA Mafia says Randle for Zion should be explored. He wanted to be a Knick, not a Pelican. I don't know.
Not on his contract.
Zion, that type of money for somebody that can hardly stay on the court. I don't know if I go that route.
Hardly.
I try to be nice, Foxy.
I'm the bastard on this team.
I'm the one that bump into these guys at the airport, man. I don't want no smoke when I'm trying to go on my vacation.
You got that leg sweep and hook, toe hold, so I ain't worried about you. You'll do that Almeida.
I saw a funny comment somebody mentioned with Ja, with the gun laws in New York City save Ja from himself. I would say no. I think that would just put Ja in line for a 3-year jail sentence that might be brought down to a year and a day like they did with Lil Wayne.
Yeah, I think the only thing that would save him is the DAs. Bragg and stuff like that. Yeah, all these Soros DAs that, people can't get out of their house because we don't want to prosecute son of a bitches that are doing terrible shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. David Smith says CAA rules the Knicks country club, not a basketball franchise. Canal Ben Lawyer says another reason Cat is coming. Nah, I don't want Cat, man. I don't think Cat is built for it either.
It's not.
Let's see. KJ7 Full says stars rise under pressure. Randle falls. CAA Mafia asks, Foxy, would you go and get Ja Morant?
I hate Ja Morant. I hate it. Meaning, I love Brunson. I'm old, so my value system is different. I love somebody that loves basketball and respects the game of basketball. I don't like people, Ja, forget about all the off-court stuff, doing waves and all this stuff on the court. Hey, I grew up as the biggest sports fan in history, and leave it to today's athlete. Game, sport after sport, whether a guy in the Rays hitting a home run, stopping and crossing his arms at third base and looking around like that. Old days. You get up to bat, I'm throwing at your head. You get up a back a second time, I'm throwing at your head. You get up a third time, I'm throwing at your head. All the games, man. Today's athletes, I can't stand them. This may be my last year doing the draft, folks, because of the players I'm watching. It's like, Jesus, man, this is this year's draft. I have 87 profiles, and I'll be going into draft mode. The combine's coming up, but I've been losing my love for the game because of these young players. The players are killing the game of basketball. It's a pure game. You play it like Brunson. You don't play it like Ja.
Yeah, speaking of Ja, Buzzer Beater with a super chat says if Ja was in New York, he'd be in trouble like Plaxico. Facts.
Only if he shoots himself in the thigh.
Yeah, true. I still can't forgive Plaxico for that, man. We were en route for another Super Bowl.
Some guys can't say this, their biggest enemies, in different versions, but Randle is big as enemies himself, man. Some of these guys can't get the hell out of the way when they have the world. They made it. You worked hard, really hard. You made it to the pinnacle of success, and you sabotage in your life, your career, your reputation, your family's reputation. What? To be hard, be cool. Can't you just be cool with yourself like Brunson and a couple others? Like, I don't need to wear sunglasses, and I'm just real. I have a loss. It's on me. It's on me. He's a leader. These other guys, maybe they wanted it more than us. Who says that shit?
Mm-hmm. I heard that. I was just like, oh man, this guy
Get
here.
rid of this prick. You know, like who says that?
Yeah, I knew he was lost when he said that. I was like,
he's been lost. Yeah.
Somebody mentioned, would we? Oh, here we go. Steve Larson says Knicks should pursue either Pascal Siakam or OG. OG's a nice piece, and he fills what we need. But like we've mentioned it, a few times here on the channel, OG wants a larger role. I just don't know if that's something that we could provide him here with the Knicks. And I don't know if he's good enough, I think, offensively to get that larger role. Defensively, it will be locked down.
Dynamite, yeah.
And he can, knock down the three in some catch and shoot situations. But for him to be a focal point of the offense, I just don't know if he's there.
Injury history, but also it'd have to be a sign and trade. He's a clutch client, so unless we don't want to trade for anybody that's going to walk after the contract. So I don't know about OG.
Craig says if we can trade Randle for KP or Jeremy Grant, then we're cooking with fish grease. I don't know. Everybody wants KP to come back. I still got beef with KP from the way he acted on his way out of here.
Yeah, I'm not into KP. Hey, I've watched 2 days of barbecue pitmasters, and to perfect my brisket, pork ribs, and pork shoulder recipes, but I've never seen anybody cook with fish grease. So that's a really ugly thought.
Oh man, Almighty Finesse says Bradley Beal is available. I mean, over the years, I've always been against Bradley Beal and him being on this squad, but I don't know. You see Jalen Brunson cook the way he's cooking, and you see the way there was no help for him out there on that court. It makes you start to think, or at least makes me start to think a little bit more about Bradley Beal. I hate that contract. Bradley Beal himself, I don't know how committed he is to actually winning, but he's a bucket. And come playoff time, he's not like some of these other guys where I'm going to be concerned about the consistency. It's just, defensively, having him and Brunson out there together, that's not ideal. But you would just hope that, those two can orchestrate enough offense to kind of overcome any liability they are defensively.
Dwayne Dennis, the whole problem with the NBA started with the implementation of analytics, the beginning of the downfall of basketball as we know it. There's some truth to that, man. Mm-hmm. There's some truth to that the analytics guys and data scientist guys said it makes no sense. A 3-point is worth, in their math, 1.5 times more. So no such thing, it makes no sense for you to take a long mid-range shot. Take another foot back. So now you have the advent of kids saying, hey, I'm going to take logo threes. And we're like, yo, what are you doing, man? How many times during this series did we say to ourselves from a shot selection, whoa, Randle, row IQ, what the hell was that? How did you just take that shot? And they're just three crazy. They don't play the game. They don't play the game the way I like it to play, man. Mid-range, there's a reason why they're higher. It's a higher percentage shot. I have no problem with threes, but it has to be a good mix. But the guys, the way they play the game today, hey, like I always say, and I'll repeat with Bob Myers, the architect of the Golden State Warriors, said that analytics are like bikinis. You see a lot, but not everything. So you got to still have the eye test besides the stats.
It's a piece of the puzzle when it comes to analyzing the game, but it's not something that you should base your conclusions off solely on analytics. All right. Well, speaking of stats and analytics, let's look at what the team did overall for the playoffs. Yeah, we'll be able to see some of the stats. We averaged 100.1 points per game, which was 14th best. We averaged 45.4 rebounds per game. That's one bright spot. We were fifth in those regards. Assists, we were last at 18.7 assists per game. Also last in 3-point percentage at 29.2%. And then we were 14th, shooting 43.3% from the field, and 13th, shooting 74.6% from the charity stripe. And once again, Only 16 teams in the playoff. So once again, we will last in assists and last in the 3-point shooting. So, moving forward, two areas we got to work on is our outside shooting and also our ball movement. And that's all going to be focused solely on Tibbs and his front office. Tibbs has to find a way to, get the ball moving as opposed to us being so ISO heavy. I mean, Brunson, when he's matched up against a weaker defender, he can break them down and get to his spots, but that can't be the only thing this offense is able to do. We've got to be a little bit more creative, getting some open looks, like you mentioned it earlier. Maybe some off-ball screens for Quentin Grimes to get him going. Even Emmanuel Quickley, when he's healthy and out there, get him moving a little bit more with some off-ball screens, see if that can free him up, as opposed to him, solely creating with the ball in his hands. It has to be a little bit more creativity with this offense because, come playoff time, we really do struggle to put points up.
Yeah, and what you brought about Hart passing next season, why can't we have somebody work all summer with Mitch? If you can't have a pick and pop game, you can't have a jump hook. Maybe you could teach him how to pass. No, I'm serious. Try something that'll add value. So put him up there, and the guy's cutting to the rim. You're 7 feet. You're gonna see those lanes a lot easier. Try something. But out of 16 teams, this is abysmal, man. Look at that. Sherwin, shout out to Westchester's finest, Sherwin. He touched on it a few minutes ago, saying, when you average this amount of assists, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yep. And let's jump right into the analytics, see what's going on there. Well, not the analytics. This is our regular season stats, how we did. So just to compare what we did in the playoffs and where we ranked. So in the playoffs, we averaged 100.1 points per game. In the regular season, 116 points per game. Big drop off there. Rebounds, we averaged 46.6 in the regular season. Postseason, 45.4. So not too big of a discrepancy there. Playoffs, we averaged 18.7 assists. And then in the regular season, 22.9. So again, another big drop off come playoff, when the defense picks up. So there is going to be some drop off offensively in terms of totals, but,
guys can't hit shots, you're not going to get assists.
Exactly. Field goal percentage in the playoffs, 43.3%. And in the regular season, 47%. So big drop off there when it comes to our field goal percentage. And then 3-point percentage. Regular season, we shot 35.4% from three. And in the playoffs, that dropped down to 29.2% from three. So you can see the offense just completely fell off the rails.
It's the difference of us playing Boston. I'm serious. If we just hit what we did during a regular season from three, we'd be playing Boston. We would have already beaten the Heat.
The Heat, yep. You remember the Heat? They came into the series missing some big pieces, and Hero, and I won't call Oladipo a big piece, but
Hero, yeah.
Oladipo was a solid guy off the bench for them, gave them some, some offense, and was decent defensively, I guess. But that is a series I still think the Knicks should have won, and I think that adds a lot to the disappointment of us being sent home by the Miami Heat, feeling that we were the better team, and if we just played how we played in the regular season, like you said, we'd be playing Boston. So unfortunate, but at least it gives us some tape to evaluate the squad and come back better next season.
Yeah, we have another super chat from the wonderful buzzer beater.
Salute to buzzer beater. Says Foxy, Mitch needs to work on his free throws.
If he hasn't done it in the first 5 years of his career, what makes you think he's going to do it now, buzzer?
Yeah, and he's been talking about working on his offense all these years, and we haven't seen him do much of anything with that. So
no, you saw him as a righty go up with his left hand and whatever the hell that was.
Yeah, to me that wasn't all that. I saw some people say that was encouraging. Me, not so
encouraging.
Much. Yeah.
Yeah. On a basket, we really need to go up with your offhand. Yep.
That was like a little struggle shimmy. He tried to hit him with a shimmy and go, finish with the left, catch him off guard, but really didn't work out in his favor.
Another super chat from the wonderful Ace of Spade.
Salute Ace of Spade. It says the tips go away from what works in Game 5. He went away from what works, I think, in the entire series, especially, in Game 6, he went away with what works, because I think we've been saying that Hart out there with RJ really messes with our spacing. And he went with that lineup for, what was it, majority of the fourth quarter. I think if he had brought Grimes in a little bit earlier, it really would have helped us in terms of making a push to kind of, win that game.
I agree. I was asking for Grimes to come in too.
Yep. With Tibbs, he's going to be someone that's going to be evaluated. He's going to be even more scrutinized, I think, this upcoming season, because you're looking at all these coaches that are getting fired. You've got coaches that have won a lot of games. You've got coaches that have, won Coach of the Years. You've got coaches that have won, rings, and they're getting canned because they can't get their teams to succeed in the postseason. So, he's progressed from what we did 2 years ago in terms of getting past the first round. But this team, you're expecting them to be in the playoffs again next year, and you expect them to perform a lot better. If we see a similar performance next season that we did in this season, I would expect the team to move on from Tibbs. But at that point, he would have 1 year left on his deal. And, we're seeing guys like Monty Williams get fired with 3 years left on their deal. So I think it would be within the cards for Tibbs to get fired if this team continues to struggle, especially offensively, next playoffs. God willing that we're there.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with my comment earlier about today's athletes. If you're a coach today, coach in college, because the player has to do what the hell you're a god in college. If you're a coach, you don't do what I tell you to do, you're on the bench. The crazies, run the asylum in the NBA, the players. So the coaches that is, whether Vogel last year with the Lakers and all these other things that we've seen, they're so dispensable and they don't give a shit because they're making, $10 million. The coaches are making big money now, but Tibbs' hair is for a reason. He rips his freaking hair out of his head after every game, like these son of a bitches. We went over this in practice. We went over this in film. What was he thinking? Today's athletes could drive you crazy in the pros. So if I was a coach today, I'd just say, hey, let me make my money, so take care of my family, and then I'm quitting, go back to college and be able to coach. You can't I don't know how you can coach in the NBA anymore. These kids, today's athletes, and it just drives me crazy.
Yep. Also seeing chat, a lot of people saying Doc is next. Yeah, he's probably out of Philly as well. But I don't think Doc is a great coach per se, but.
Yeah, I've never been big on his coaching.
All right, so let's see what else we got going on with the squad. Let's look at the analytics. So, oh no, that's still not the analytics. All right, boom. Now we're at the analytics. So, offensive rating for the playoffs. Team had a 107.7 offensive rating. Defensive rating, 107.8. So you see that's good enough for third. And out of teams in the playoffs, our net rating was a wash. So that puts us at sixth in the league. Offensive effective field goal percentage was 49.2. That puts us as 15th out of the playoff teams. Defensive effective field goal percentage was 50.2. It was third best out of the playoff teams. And pace still towards the bottom at 92.7, which was 13th best out of the playoff teams. And then we can compare that to what we did in the regular season. So offensive rating, 117.8, which was third. Big drop off from 107. Defensive rating was 114.8 compared to 107.8. Net rating was +3 compared to a 0 net rating in the playoffs. Offensive effective field goal was 54.1 in the regular season, and then in the playoffs it was 49.2. And then our defensive effective field goal percentage was 50.2 in the playoffs, and it was 53.6 in the regular season. And in pace, 97.1 regular season, postseason 92.7. Things slowed down even more.
Yeah, a 3-ball affected everything.
Yeah, the offense is just way too stagnant, man. Just got to find ways to get better looks. When Brunson is being relied upon as being the only the only source of any type of creation, it really makes us a lot easier to guard. You throw a bunch of bodies at Jalen Brunson and you let everybody else beat you. And we did the same thing against the Cavs. We threw bodies at guys like Donovan Mitchell, and we forced Isaac Okoro to beat us, and he couldn't. And in this series, our guys couldn't make the Heat pay whenever they were left open. So it's unfortunate, but always next year. What else we got going on?
Hey, shout out to Jesco for all your support this year. Almost like a field producer for us.
Yes,
Great
sir.
questions and all you do behind the scenes. But he said, I want Embiid or Jalen Brown, and I would be lying to you if I didn't say to myself, hope 76ers beat Boston. So Jalen says to himself, you know what? As long as I'm here, I'll always be a number 2 option with Tatum. Let me get the hell off this team, and have a little birdie whisper in his ear. You come to New York, you're the number 1 option. You're playing with Jalen Brunson, who's cool like that. You saw you play with Luka, but the biggest market in the world, you could be the star, but I don't know if that'll happen, especially if they win it all this year.
Yep. Also, we got a super chat from Jay Boogie. Shout out to Jay Boogie for the $5 super chat. Says, thank you for a great season of Sunday content. I'm always tuned in when you're live. Happy Mother's Day. Jay Boogie presents my Shun Sign on all platforms. Salute to Jay Boogie. Big shout out to Jay Boogie, man. He had the postseason anthem. So, salute to everything he's doing, all the hard work and dedication he's been putting towards his craft. And we appreciate you being one of the subscribers and part of the SVTV community. So big shout out to Jay Boogie. Been doing some great stuff.
Proud of you, Jay.
Sir. All right, let's see what else we got going on. Keyshawn says Jalen can get the most money with the Celtics. Well, I mean, apparently,
crazy money, almost $60 million a year.
But apparently, it's not all about the money. I mean, look at what Ja Morant's doing. Clearly, he don't care about the money.
Yeah, that could buy a lot of Glocks.
Yeah, man. He threw $40 million down the drain playing with guns, and then a week later, he's still caught playing with guns. I don't know. These people are crazy. Steve Larson, Knicks have a number 1 this year. We might.
We'll find out this week.
Yeah, it's like spades. We got a possible. We got a possible.
Hail Mary, full of grace.
Yep. If it falls out of the top 10, it comes to us. Jesco says Jalen Brown is a great person as well. Would love him on this team.
He's a quirky dude, though. He's a good person and stuff, but he's quirky. There's times you're like, oh my God, look at that play. Look at that 3-point shot. Look at that athleticism. And then you're like, oh my God, that was a really stupid play, Jalen. What the hell were you doing? So he's a strange guy, Jalen. He's a weird bird.
Yeah. Interesting character. What else we got going on in chat? Kaiser Souls 8718 says we got to find a way to play with pace next season and get easy points. Facts, especially that second unit. You got guys like Emmanuel Quickley. You got guys like Obi Toppin, Josh Hart. He was great at that. Getting rebounds, pushing the ball up the court to get us some easy buckets.
Long passes off the rebound.
Yep, outlet passes. So yeah, we definitely should play with a little bit more pace. I'd love to see what the pace was like for the bench unit and compare it to the starters. I would assume that the bench played with a much higher pace than the starters. I mean, even in the game against the Heat, there were moments where we had numbers in transition. Ball got to Julius Randle, and he just started dribble until the defense got back into position. And I was just like, oh my gosh, man. Attack, bro. The playoffs.
X.
All right. Anybody else you want to give a shout out to in chat?
Just a lot of Dirty Dancers, Steve Larson, Lynx Black. He said, Foxy, I got news for you. Jalen Brown wouldn't even be able to pry the ball from Brunson's cold, dead hands. I don't know about that, man. If Luka was able to, I think Jalen would be able to.
Hey, on that one.
John Talento also. John, you're wonderful. New York fandom legend, great mod, but great person. Thank you for all your support. It's been a good journey this year and the last several, but you're good people, John. Thank you for everything, man. I love you.
All right, Foxy. This is the part of this live stream where we're gonna jump into the grades and see what we give each other, or give the players, or what grades we give them for their performance this season. So the first player we're going to look at is Jalen Brunson. So Foxy, you gave him a B plus. Want to elaborate a little further on why you gave him a B plus?
The only reason it wasn't an A because of defense, but everything else, everything else about him is just magnificent. On court, off court, couldn't ask for anything more. You can't get everything in a player. I was spoiled because of growing up with guys like Walt Frazier that could do it on both sides of the floor, but couldn't ask anything more than Jalen Brunson, one of the steals of the century with his contract. I love him. And the only reason, again, the B plus was on the defensive side.
Yeah, I gave him an A. He does have some issues defensively, but when you look at the value he was able to provide, you've got that contract that's descending in nature. He's making less than 30 mil, but yet he's giving you the production and he's impacting the game like you would expect from a max level type guy. So for that, I had to give him an A. He's been the leader on this team. He's been the most consistent player on this team. And, without him, I don't even think this is a playoff squad. So for those type of contributions, I had to give Jalen Brunson an A.
Cool.
Also, let me put something in the poll. What grade do you give Jalen Brunson? Let's see what the chat says. A, B, C, and D. No Fs. We're going to be nice. Going the participation trophy route.
Eddie said also, weird guys is code for educated. Yo, don't put words in my motherfucking mouth.
All right, let's see. Jesco says B plus in my opinion. Defense, and at times he forgets to pass. Best player on this team and best contract in the NBA. John Talento, he says JB gets an A. D Rebo says Brunson's the only reason why we didn't get swept. We surveyed 100 people. He gave Jalen Brunson an A plus. Dirty Dancer, Jalen Brunson, he's getting an A. Yeah, A, B plus, I think are the most logical answers. If you want to give some demerits for the poor defense or for him, dribbling a little bit too much, those are reasonable concerns and reasonable things that he has to work on moving forward. But I just gave the A because he's been the heart and soul of this squad. And if you look at it as A as excellent, I think Jalen Brunson had an excellent season. And, if he was able to be better next year, I think that would just be something that most people wouldn't have expected when he signed this deal. For him to come out, ball out the way he did this season, and then to potentially go out next season and be better. Because remember, Brunson's still young. You would expect him to still continue to get better. I don't think he's reached his ceiling. This is the first time he's really been given the keys to an organization. We saw how he was able to handle it, and I would expect him to go into the lab, continue to work on his game, get better, and come back as a more polished player next season, and one that the league is going to be put on notice for. So I had to give Jalen Brunson an A for those reasons.
Yeah, my only prayers is just his health. It's just real hard for diminutive guards to stay healthy in this league. So, if, he hasn't had an extensive history of injuries, but his history is in 21, he hurt his shoulder in 2020, had a foot injury in 21, a quad injury in 22, a foot injury in 22, hip injury in 22, foot injury this year, another foot injury. So ankle injury, obviously. So I get worried with the little guys that those ankles and those feet, they take they add up. They take a beating, and also because he's so wonderful at taking charges, because he's a real dog. So that's the only thing I pray for, that health-wise, that he's able to, play the games. And again, if I was a GM, I'd take a step back and say, hey, he's going to miss games every year, this guy. We have to have a viable backup plan, even if it's just rest days, to let him be the best he can be. We can't play him. We'll ruin him. And the reality is, folks, we got him for 2 years, 2 more years. 3 years from now, he has a player option. So where he's going to go from one of the best contracts of the year to where we're going to have to say, do we want to play? Are we going to have pay him 40 million, 50 million, whatever he wants to ask? But we have 2 years where he's under a good this current contract before he has a player option to really see how far we can go.
Yeah, that is definitely something that you have to keep your eye on long term. How the injuries hold up, and if he'll be able to be good enough for another long term contract where we might have to give him a major pay raise. But I think for now, just got to be thrilled with the way he's been performing at that point guard position. As a Knicks fan, it's been forever since we had an elite point guard. I think the last one that you could say was a point guard that could be considered somewhat elite might have been Starberry, and that was back when I was in freshman in high school, or whatever the case may be. That's a while ago. So
elite in talent, but not as a leader.
Yeah, and Brunson gives you both. So to me, you got to be thrilled about it, and you just got to continue to build around him.
Let's just see prayers he can hold up.
Yes, sir. So I closed the poll on Brunson. Let's see what the final tallies were. I believe it is 93% of the votes said A for Jalen Brunson, and then we have 6% that went with B. And also we had 30 participants, so thank you for that. We really do appreciate it. I dropped another poll for Quentin Grimes. This time I want to know whether he's an A, B, C, or D for his performance this season. And we'll display what we thought here on screen. So Foxy, for Quentin Grimes, you gave him a C+.
Yeah, elaborate a little bit? Yeah, I didn't think he was as consistent as I would have liked. Coming out of college, 40% 3-point shooter first year. So he ended up the season like that, but he didn't play well. He showed he's strictly a 2. So, as we said, we unfortunately, because of our roster, he had to defend other guys, and it may have impacted him. But, so I gave him a C+. I thought, I really wish his shot was a lot better, and I also wish he went to the hole. Like we said, I know you're trying to help the team and kick it out. Get to the goddamn hole, man. If you're that close, shoot the freaking ball.
Yeah, I gave him a B-. He played solid defense. He was tasked with guarding the opposing team's best perimeter player. And, I know the 3-point shot was a bit inconsistent at times, but he shot, 38, 39% from 3. So he is
during the season, yeah.
So he is giving you some solid, 3-and-D level production. I would have hoped, or I would have liked to have him in a more expanded role on offense, get some more shots up. But he did everything that, Tom Thibodeau and his coaching staff has asked of him. And, the B- is coming from the poor production in the postseason. I probably would have left him as a B, but,
I'm with you. I would have been absolutely B during the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the guys and some of the stuff, it's like a final exam. You could ace all this stuff during the season, but if you don't get that final exam, how doesn't it impact your final grade?
Yeah, and that's what ended up me dropping him to a B-.
Yeah, so it's very easy to drop like that when you shoot 30% from the floor and 24% from 3-point, and so that's why I got the C+ on him. But he showed development, and he's a young player. We hope to see, like we said, midi and a few other things in his game next year, and maybe lose 5 pounds or something like that. I don't know. JD and I were talking about it, that he's like an old school athlete. He's thick. I worry about those guys with hammies, muscle tears, stuff like that. So hopefully he can stay healthy.
Yeah. So John Talento, he's giving Grimes a C+. Lex Destroyer, he's giving him a B-. KG 7 Full says B. Kaiser Soze 718. I think Grimes gets a C, and I expect him to be better next year. Jesco
better be better next year.
mm-hmm. Jesco's B- for Grimes. He has shown promise, great defense, and at times great shooting. But he has games where his shots look like Alfred Payton shot him. Yeah, there are some tough moments from Grimes. We surveyed 100 people. Grimes gets a C+. Still got work to do on attacking and finishing at the rim. Dirty Dancer, B- for Q Dot. So everybody seems like they're in the same area roughly. Also,
ballpark, yeah.
Yep. Also, if you're watching this post stream, make sure you let us know your thoughts and your grades down in the comment section as well. Lynx Black says I give Grimes a C-. He also needs better coaching. Hector Gatson says C. So we do have one F. Keith Turner says he's giving Grimes an F. Keith, man, you giving him an F, you got to elaborate.
Yeah, you can't give the kid an F like that.
Yeah.
Man. Especially, he deserves higher than that just on his defense.
Defense alone.
Defense alone.
Yep. Also, we only got 70 likes. Do us a solid. 138 in chat. Let's see if we can get to 100 by the end of the stream. Smash that like button. Really do appreciate it. We love hitting that 100 like milestone. We really do appreciate it. Kaiser Soza 718 says Grimes was a star in Summer League. I expected him to shoot a lot better. I need him to finish that dunk on Butler next season. I think Grimes has potential. I don't know if Grimes...
he shot like shit in Summer League.
Yeah, exactly. His efficiency was down.
His efficiency was down. He was a star in a summer league, but there's been a lot of guys who have been stars in the summer league that are playing in Europe right now.
Yeah, he showed more showed more flashes of a playmaker in summer league is what I really liked from Grimes, as opposed to him being like a superstar scorer or anything like that. And we see some of it, like when he attacks off those closeouts, but then sometimes he gets caught in no man's land, leaves his feet, and we see some bad decisions. So definitely an area of his game gonna have to work.
But we've seen some stunning passes from him, though.
Yep.
So that's.
I remember he was a point guard initially until they realized, he really didn't have that explosiveness to continue at the position.
Exactly.
All right.
Jesco, you're so cool.
So we closed the poll. The leading vote getter is C at 64%. Then we have B at 27%, and then D 5%, and A rounding out the total at 2%. Now this next one might be pretty divisive. And that's going to be RJ Barrett. So Foxy, you want to elaborate a little bit on what grade you give RJ?
Yeah, could I ask a favor? Could you bring up the slide of plus minus for the season?
Give me 1 second.
Because that's going to really impact why I gave the grade, folks. And, earlier comments about IQ and stuff like that. So, these will bring that up in a second. I think, plus minus, it was brought up earlier about stats. You have to, factor them. It's not, a closed book, what it says, but it absolutely gives you insight into the player. And I think this really shows from my major issues. And I said this earlier, folks, this season, that I think RJ is going to absolutely get better on offense. I think he'll get smarter. I've said this before, that RJ could work on his mechanics, but shooting touch comes from the basketball gods. And I don't think RJ will have a shooting touch. So folks, here, thank you, my friend. This is the this past season's plus minus leaders for the team. Manuel Quickley, 318. It's a winning player. Josh Hart, 191. Wow. It just shows you. RJ Barrett, minus 62. RJ Barrett, again, a minus 62. And look at the other players he was playing along. That, and I said this, and I'll repeat it, that I said I don't think he's near his ceiling, RJ, on the offensive side. But I think he's at his ceiling on defense, because he's not going to get faster. He's not going to get quicker. He's not going to jump higher. He's He's this slow-footed guy that is physically challenged. Guys just blow past him. He has issues with his handle. Kyle Lowry, key moments and other times. So I have major issues with RJ. That minus 62 to me jumps off the page of saying whether you like, whatever. That's just a lot, folks. So he came into the season. He signed that big contract. Didn't have that pressure on him. It was time for him to become Star J. And I gave him a C because he came in, everyone, he always starts slow. Don't give me that bullshit that he starts slow. It's like, no, man, you start slow maybe in your first season and stuff like that. But this is your fourth year, 31% during the regular season from three. Unacceptable. You're a number 3 pick, 2.8 assists to 2.2 turnovers, basically a 1-to-1. You're not making the players around you better, highly inefficient. So, RJ, like I said, I think he'll get better on offense, but I think he'll get toasted on defense from this point on.
Yeah, he's getting a C because he kind of redeemed himself with some of his playoff performances. Because if not, it would have been either a C- or a D. Because I think defensively, he was a major issue, a major weak spot for this team. And offensively, he was just extremely inconsistent. And, RJ, I still think he can be a solid player in this league, but the clock is ticking, man. We gave him, a decent deal that warranted more production, and of course, that deal doesn't kick in until next season. But you would have liked for this year to be a season where he says, "Okay, I've been given that contract. I've been given, the front office has bestowed upon me the belief that I'm a long-term piece." So they've given me this deal. I should come out and I should ball out. And, the 3-point shot is still not shooting them at a high enough clip. What did he shoot? 31% from three. Not seeing the type of playmaking you would have liked from a guy like RJ, who can be a decent playmaker. Has shown some chemistry with Mitchell Robinson in that starting unit. And then also he's been given an opportunity to overlap with that second unit. And when he's with that second unit, I just don't see him take over as much as I would have hoped from a guy drafted at his position and, bestowed upon, and given that type of contract. So for me personally, I felt like that was a C-level performance for RJ throughout this season. And if it wasn't for the playoffs, the couple games he did have that he kind of went off, and, probably would have been a lot lower for me.
Yeah, unfortunately, going 1 for 10 in the most important game of the year, all the other things get erased real quick because, in crunch time.
Well, to be honest, we wouldn't even be in this round if it wasn't for RJ and his performance in Cleveland. So you got to give him that. The reason we're in the second round, I think, is because he actually stepped up and assisted Jalen Brunson in carrying us to the second round.
It's a valid point.
So what else we got people saying from RJ? We got a C+. RJ gets an E for effort. Lex the Destroyer says RJ gets a B- for inconsistency. John Talento says RJ gets a C+. JJ says C for RJ, too inconsistent. KG7 full, he only got a C for a couple of okay playoff games. I'm right there with you, KG. Kaiser Soj says I'm giving RJ a C too because his jumper regressed. Jesco says Fox giving RJ a D. I'm calling it, and I'm with him on that as well. Keith Dollar says RJ gets a C. J Deals Direct, RJ gets a C-. Eddie says RJ gets an A++ because he's not strapped. That was a good one. And healthy. He ended the season healthy, so that's 2 reasons why he gets the plus. KG7 Full says C. Go ahead.
Yeah, Craig says plus- means you were on the floor, means you might have been on the floor when the team or opposing team went on a run. Then why didn't the other guys that he was playing along have the same minus 62, Craig?
Yeah. I mean, in one game or one box score, you can use that as an argument. But if you're looking at the plus minus for the entire season, you would think that there'd be more.
It averages out.
Average out, yep. We surveyed 100 people, says Grimes has a higher plus minus than Brunson. Correct. All right, let's
Yeah,
close.
but we've talked about it. That's why you got a B plus. That defense, that's a dirty little secret. If you really want to get into the things, team was better actually with Jalen Brunson off the court this year statistically. But that's just stats that we would never be anywhere without Brunson. So that stat, but it does show you like, whoa, he gets lit up. So he averages 27 and he gives up 30.
And Foxy, guess who else was up there on the high side of that plus minus? Mitchell Robinson. Put some respect on my guy's name, Foxy.
Yo, just because you're on a plane with him and he took a picture with you, I got to talk to Inf about this. We got to kidnap you and brainwash you to the realities.
Mitch was my guy before that.
Yeah.
All right, so we closed the poll. What grade did the chat give RJ Barrett? So 58% said he got a C, 32% gives him a B, 7% says D, and then we've got 1% that says he got an A. And we got 56 votes too. Thank you guys for your contribution and supporting the polls. We really do appreciate it. All right. Yep. So now this one.
Another super chat.
Oh, did we? Let me see. Oh, yeah, from Buzzabita. Thank you. 2019 top 3 picks, Zion, Ja, and RJ are struggling. Well, I guess Ja is struggling with self-control. I guess we can put that there. Zion struggling with health. And then RJ is struggling with his jump shot.
Eating.
Oh, man.
And RJ's just struggling.
Yeah.
Especially on defense.
Facts. But I still got faith in my guy, RJ, man. He'll turn it around.
Like I said, I have faith that his offensive game will get better. But I don't see it.
You don't see ever change.
He's, like I said, this is who he is. He's his 5th year in the league. So, folks, I'm old school. In your 5th year, you don't, with people, he's 22. Oh, he's 22. Next year, he's only 23. I don't like talking about somebody realizing potential in their 5th year. This is, by 4th year, old school, methodologies, we're pretty much coming to the ceiling of who RJ is. And I said to you, there's never been an all-star that has, I'm wrong. There's only been one all-star. I should correct myself, that has the shooting stats for a career as RJ from at the rim, short mid-range, long mid-range, 3 and corner 3. And that's Draymond Green. And he didn't make the all-star team because of his shooting.
He made the all-star team because of his teammates.
No, because it was brilliant. He changed the game as a point power forward. He literally, hopefully, will get the credit, and the other stuff of kicking guys in the nuts and stuff will get lost. But he was truly a trendsetter in this league for what he did. But and it was acknowledged for him to make an all-star team because of what he makes a team, all the players around him better. RG doesn't make the players around him better.
Occasionally makes Mitch better.
Occasionally, 2 times every 3 games, 2 times he'll throw 2 lobs.
Yeah. All right, so Fox, let's move on to the next person on the list. That's going to be Julius Randle. So what grade do you give Julius?
You have to start with A during a regular. You can't make an all-NBA team without, being an A. But it came crashing down the last few weeks of the season with his meltdown with IQ as the pressure mounted, and then his performance in the playoffs. So he came all the way down from an A to a C. And not only it came down from an A to a C, he came down from an A to get the fuck out of here. I don't want you on this fucking team anymore. I can't stand you. Your body language, I am just sick to shit about this guy. I'm exhausted talking about him. They can't trade him quick enough. So all NBA regular season and ship him out as quick as he can in the offseason.
Yeah, I had Julius at right around a B+, because I didn't want him. He wasn't as good, I don't think, as Jalen Brunson. Even though Randle got all the accolades, I still felt like Brunson was the engine for the squad. So I wasn't going to rate him as high as Brunson. But then to complete no-show, outside of that one game, he did have one solid performance where you could say, okay, it felt like he was, playing like that Randle we saw in the regular season. But for the most part, he was a no-show this playoff series. And, for that really affected the grade I had to give him. So I ended up giving him a C+, even though he had a phenomenal regular season. He kind of got back to that Julius Randle we saw 2 years ago when he was playing with very little fans in the arena. He was able to perform now with the fans, but come playoff time, once that pressure hit, he completely cracked and folded. So for that, I had to give him a C+. And even a C+ is being nice.
Kaiser Soze is a friend from day one when I started podcasting. Really cool dude, and I love his comment. D for delusional if you think we can still build around Randle. Yeah. That's epic.
John Talento says Randle B+ for the regular season. Yep. And then once you average it with the F for the postseason, you get down to like a C+, C.
Exactly.
B- for Randle. Edwin Burgo says I gave Randle a C. He needs to get his meltdowns under control. Facts.
Never happened.
Mm-hmm.
You just hope he has his meltdown somewhere else.
Yes, sir. We'll get a lot less publicity too. Trini 2DB868 says Randle D. Attitude stinks. Playoff performance stinks. He has to go. Seriously, it's time. Congrats on his awards though. Facts. Congrats to him. To celebrate somewhere else. What did Jessica say?
C for choked in the playoffs, but I think recently, bias aside, I have to give him a B. Very good regular season, awful playoffs. I still think he was hurt against Miami.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was in some discomfort, but if you're out there, we got to grade you as if you were a healthy body because, if you're not good enough to perform at a playoff level, then you should sit because you're going to do more to hurt the team than benefit. Unless you're God level like Steph and you can be a decoy or something.
Quick shout out to Ronald Miller. Salute family. C-. Randle, be your third best player. Ronald is I have great respect, one of the great minds in Knick fandom. Love his takes. So have great respect for you, man.
Yes, sir. KG7 Full says no excuses. Mega NYK says package Tibbs, Jules, and Mitch. What else we got going on before we close the poll? Steve Larson says Julius tries, but he can't be a number one. At this point, he's not even a number two. It may be a number three on a.
Well, he's a number two to me.
Foxy over here calling him a POS. Julius regular season was a monster A+, postseason C because he was injured. So if you include both, B. Okay. I don't know if I'd call his regular season an A+, but I want to say A. A-. I can run with that. All right, let's close the poll and see what chat has to say. So C wins the day at 36%. B is a close second, 31%. Then we've got D not far behind at 18%. And then we've got A at 14%. So this, I guess, you would say is the most polarizing. You've seen a bunch of D's. You even see a bunch of A's. So people are pretty split on how to grade Julius Randle in his performance this season.
Hey, I just gave a shout out to Ronald Miller for his basketball knowledge. I think I may have to take it back. He just said Randle is our Rodman. That's sacrilege, bro.
I guess he means he's just out there to grab rebounds. I don't know.
I'll take Rodman in a wedding dress. No, Rodman's a winner. Rodman is a beast.
Rodman did the little things.
Yeah, do not put them in the same sentence in my book ever.
Yes, sir. All right, let's move to the next starter. And that would be Mitchell Robinson. So, Foxy, what grade do you give Mitch?
I give Mitch a C. And the reason why is he signed a $60 million contract. So the minute he signed that $60 million contract, you said it earlier, I wanted a double-double. And even if not, I wanted double rebounds. So he was a blink away there at 9.3 during the regular season. The foul shooting was atrocious. It's so bad that Spo was doing, this generation's version of Shaq-a-Hack,
Whack-a-Mitch.
Yeah, exactly. So His durability, again, shout out to our guy, JD. I love you, man. I love you, JD. That he took a stopwatch last year and literally showed that he can't go 5 minutes without him getting winded. So whether it's his lack, whether it's who he is, whether it's lack of conditioning, whatever it is, he's a very good player. Hey, we said he's an elite offensive rebounder, but absolutely no offensive game whatsoever. And he's just he just doesn't come up big. He teases the shit out of you. He comes up big, like you said, against Cleveland. It's like, I want to see a monster run from Mitch. 20 freaking games straight, 30 games straight, a season straight of him being a monster. And it's just inconsistency. Monster, invisible, foul trouble, monster, invisible, monster. Ugh. Oh, man. He just signed a $60 million contract, 12 million more than Robert Williams. I wanted to see a whole lot more from Mitch, man.
I hear you on that, Foxy. I gave him a B. I still think Mitch was a beast for the most part this season. Yeah, he has some inconsistencies, and there's some games where he disappears and you like a little bit more from him. But when this team is firing on all cylinders, it's with Mitch being a problem in the paint, grabbing offensive rebounds, and being a disruptive force by making people second guess when they attack the basket. And I think I would love for him to have the double doubles. Doesn't have it, but I think defensively he's our anchor. And the biggest piece or the biggest part of this team this season was our defense. And if you had to look at somebody that would have to point to and says, they're one of the main reasons this defense was as good as it was, I think that person would be Mitchell Robinson, because he was able to rotate over and wall up the paint and not allow people to, get in and get some easy buckets, cause some turnovers and things like that. So for me, I think Mitchell Robinson, he gets a B. Could he have been better? Yes. But if you look at the people that, or the guys on this team that were the most disruptive, especially defensively, I think Mitchell Robinson is probably number one.
I gotcha. Animal says, what's the difference between Williams and Mitch? $12 million. So Begley said we have $12 million in free agency. If we sign, it could have been a lot, a few more million. But 12 million is the difference.
They make about the same money, Robert Williams and Mitchell Robinson, no?
He has a $12 million. The total contract is $12 million more for Mitch than Robert Williams.
Yeah, but over 4 years, right?
Yeah.
So about $3 million a season. That's not that big of a discrepancy.
Yeah, not for a big guy like you.
I'm just saying, a $3 million difference between players ain't much, especially when you got people making 30, 50. And if one's making 12, one making 15, I don't think that's that big of a deal.
He has a descending contract and stuff like that.
And he'll be cheaper.
Yeah,
and cheaper and easier to move as well if we decide to go that route.
Yeah. As long as he's not injured again.
True.
Did I say again?
True. All right, let's see what we got going on in trap. I see Mitch from Links Black says Mitch get a C+ from me, but like I've said before, Mitch is also a player that needs better coaching. Facts. What else we got going on? Jesco says Mitch gets an F for 48% from the line. Lex the Destroyer gives him a B-. We surveyed 100 people, says Mitchell Robinson gets a B. Was the anchor on defense even before Hart got there, but no offensive game yet. Edwin Burgos.
Yeah. 5 years in the league, so what's it going to take, 10 years to get that offensive game statistically?
Yeah. Edwin Burgos says C for Mitch. Get an offensive game going and don't leave your feet on defense. Too many pump fake fouls. Dirty Dancer says Mitch won us around. I have to give him a B for that. Trini 2DB868 says Mitch gets a D. I don't see the hype. Huffing and puffing. Bam destroyed him. John Talento, Mitch gets a C. JJ says C for Mitch. Still 0 offensive game in year 5. Sozer 718 says C. Steve Lawson, Mitch is a C at best. KJ7 full D. So I'm out here on the island thinking Mitch got a B. That's all good. I'm gonna hold down the fort. J Deals direct. Mitch gets a C. Dirty Dancer, B. J Deals Direct had to let us know twice that Mitch is getting a C. All right, let's see what the poll says. Let's close it. See what we got going on.
Quick shout out to Ghetto Intellect. Hope all is well.
Salute. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate the support.
So $3 million in salary is pennies in the NBA.
In the NBA, yeah. In my pocket, not so much, but in the NBA, yeah.
Facts.
So we closed the poll. 45% says C, 39% says B, 8% says A, and then we've got 6% that says D. We got 46 voters. So thank you all for participating. We really do appreciate it. Now, Foxy, we've been on for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. You still want to do the bench and the coach in front office, or you want to save it for another stream?
Let's go for it.
All right.
I don't know if I want to talk about this after tonight. So I'm serious, man.
All right. So let's get into it then. Let's put the bench on screen. See if we can cover the grade so we can keep the suspense effect. All right, so the first person off the bench, Foxy, I want to ask you about is Emmanuel Quickley. What grade do you give Quick?
Yo, he had, second, as we know, in voting. But I give Quick a C+. And it went from, the spectacular season. Again, I wish he one of these years he'd shoot over 40%, but he had a great season. And it came crashing down in the playoffs. So he went from a B+ to a solid B plus down to the C grade, C+ grade I gave him, and it's just he shot 44% up from 39% during the season, which was great. 37% from three, so around league average, and 81% and change. I'll round it off 82. But Jesus, man, in the playoffs, 1-to-1 rate, 1 assist, 1.1 turnovers, 35% from the floor, 24% from three. When he needed him the most, he wasn't there. So, like I said, it's like a final exam that you have to. That's a huge fact. It factors down all the good he did during the season, man. And it just showed to me, like I said, that he's not the point guard of our future. He's the microwave of our future.
Yeah, so for me, I gave Emmanuel Quickley a B-. I think he had a solid regular season, especially the second half. And he got that field goal percentage up. He wanted it over 40%. He got it to 45. The three-point percentage, he shot at 37% clip. So all solid numbers. Also, you saw the development in his game. I think one of the big issues we had with Emmanuel Quickley when he was coming into the league was he really didn't have much to showcase in terms of his mid-range game and his ability to score in that area of the court. And I think this season, we saw him kind of open up his the areas that he's able to attack opposing teams. He was able to get into the paint and finish. He showed some, fadeaways in the mid-range that he was able to knock down. He still is able to use that floater when he's not able to get all the way to the rim. And he shot the three at a much higher clip. So for all those reasons, I gave him a B-. It would have been higher if he would have performed a lot better in the playoffs. It probably would have been about a B+. Maybe even an A if he really took off like we saw in the last 10 games of the regular season. If he was able to do that in the playoffs, then, I would have had to give him an A. But because he struggled so much, the grade dropped down to a B-. And, he wasn't really able to kind of redeem himself in the Heat series, because he was out due to that injury. And, hopefully he'll take this as like a learning experience and be able to bounce back. So, for me personally, I think he had a solid season that was kind of muddied up by the poor postseason performance.
And like we said, I could have dealt a lot easier with his poor shooting performance if he assists, if he did other things, if his defense didn't play to the elite defense, especially against the Heat prior to the injury and stuff like that. So, but he's a young guy, and hopefully, like we said, he'll come back strong.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I got a lot of faith in Emmanuel. When he's confident, when he has that confidence going, he's one of the elite guys off the bench in this league. It's just that once, feels like if he takes a bad shot, if he misses his shot, he's gonna get pulled. That's when we start to see him struggle. When he's a little bit more hesitant, he's not sure of himself, and some of that can be blamed on Tibbs.
Sure.
All right, so this is what the chat says. We've got 50% saying Quick should get a B, 41% says a C, 5% says D, and then we've got 2% that says A. All right, so let's get into the next person, and that's going to be Josh Hart. It's our mid-season acquisition. So, Foxy, let me know what grade you're giving him.
Gave him a B. I thought he was a fantastic acquisition. He's a winning player. We saw not only here, but if you look at his history at Portland, from a plus-minus side, he's a winning player. His offensive rebounding, he makes the players around him better. And the only reason it wasn't even higher is only because of, like I said, Tibbs. He's a glue guy. And we asked him to be more than a glue guy, and that's why he crashed and burned somewhat in the playoffs. But I like him. Like I said, I like him a lot. I wouldn't overpay for him, though. He's walking away from basically a $14 million player option. So that's cool, but I'd sign you for $1 million or $2 million more than that, but I can't give you $18 million a year. So, like we said, Norman Powell, other guys that make $18 million a year shoot a whole lot better. So this offseason, I hope we retain him. He's a winning player. I love, he's a dog. I love dogs. Villanova tough with Brunson and stuff. But he needs to work on his shooting form, man. But this is who he is. My girl Janine said a few minutes ago that RJ is who he is, and this is Josh Hart. He has this funky release that
real funky. You got to see some of the photos, bro. Like go to Getty Images and check some of the photos of his release. It's real funky.
Yeah, it's just real robotic or mechanical. There's nothing fluid about his shooting, but he's incredibly valuable if you have the right guys around him for him to do his coast to coast. He finishes unbelievably well at the rim, but but he was a great acquisition. Got rid of Cam and got rid of a guy with a motor and brought in a guy with a motor, and he had a profound impact. And you saw the reaction on Brunson's face when he found out that we got Josh. It was more than getting a friend. He realized we were getting a warrior. So I like Josh. We get him for the right price and put him on the second team. He's a real solid player.
Yeah, I like Josh Hart. I gave him a B+. I think he really brought a lot of energy to this, especially to the second unit when we made that trade for him. And he does a lot of the things that this team needed in order to win some of those games late in the season. And, I know you did say that he's a glue guy, but I'm not going to hold it against him, the fact that Tibbs is overplaying him or was overusing him. I think when he was used in the position that he's most likely going to fill moving forward, which is a bench role, playing something like, a little bit under 30 minutes per game and things like that, you saw exactly what he can do to this team and how he can help us moving forward. So I won't hold it against him that Tibbs decided to insert him into the starting lineup and play him 40 some odd minutes a night some days and some games because, he felt like he gave him the best opportunity to win. If Hart is out there with some shooters and is much better spacing, I think you really see how much he can contribute to some winning basketball. It's just the lineups that we had when he was out there with another non-shooter is when this team really struggled. I mean, if you look at the second half and you look at some of our best lineups, I'm pretty sure Josh Hart is a part of them. So, for that, I'd have to give him a B+.
Yeah, and obviously he was skewed. He shot out of his mind, better than his career, from three and stuff when he first got here. Came back to earth during the playoffs, so who he really is shooting. But that reluctance to shoot, that's as Janine said earlier, this is who he is. He's 6 years in the league. If you think he's not gonna be afraid next year or the rest of his career shooting from three, it's a confidence thing. It's always going to be there. When it's always going to be there with him. So as long as he's in the right role, he'll be dynamite. It's up to the coaches to realize that.
Put him in the right position. Yep. And it's also up to the front office to fill out this roster so that Tibbs doesn't feel like he has to overplay Josh Hart to win.
I agree.
All right, so let's close the poll now. Let's see what we got going on. So we've got Josh Hart getting a B, 67% feel so. 24% feel like he should get a C. And then we have 8% saying he should get an A. So no votes for D.
Wouldn't deserve a D.
Yep. All right, so the next player we want to talk about is Obi Toppin. So Foxy, man, what grade are you giving Obi for the season?
I gave him a C. I would have given him an S, but you don't do that for soft. But I give him a C. A, to his, goofing aside, he can't get the minutes with Julius there, and it's a game of rhythm, so it's very difficult for 10 minutes a game if he even got that to do that, but. Doesn't rebound, doesn't block shots. He doesn't pass. He had one during the regular season, 1 assist to 0.56 turnovers. 34% from 3. He never gets to the foul line. He took 5 foul shots in 2 rounds of the playoffs. Guy, he never gets to the rim and gets a foul. So. He's great in transition, and like I said, I think he can score. He could definitely be a 20-point scorer in this league, but I just don't see him as a 4. Rebounding, defense, and he's a poser. He's just too soft for me. I'm not an Obi fan.
I gave Obi a C+. I mean, there's only so much you can do in a limited role. I mean, how many minutes per game did he average? 13, 14 minutes per game? There's only so much you can do in that amount of time, especially when you're backing up a guy like, Julius Randle, that whenever you do, struggle a little bit, you got to get pulled and Julius Randle will get put back into the game. But, I mean, the team has asked him to be a completely different type of player than he was in college, where he was more so, rolling to the basket, getting to the basket more frequently. But now they're asking him to be more so of a, knockdown perimeter shooter to help with the spacing and things like that. And in that role, I think he was decent. What did he shoot from 3? Like 34, 35%?
34 during the season.
Yeah, so he shot about 34% from 3, which is serviceable, especially looking at what he was doing in, previous seasons. So he was able to work on that. And, he always provided a lot of energy off with that bench unit, and I think for those reasons, I had to give him a C+, which is average. He could be.
And it dropped to 30% in the playoffs from 3.
Yep, he did struggle in the playoffs.
But his shooting drives me crazy. Beautiful, he nailed it. Beautiful, nailed it.
Air ball. Yeah, you got one of those a game.
How do you go from air balls to that's from a shooting mechanics or stunning? How do you do that, man?
Yeah, but he did knock down some 2 key ones
no doubt.
In Game 6.
No doubt.
Okay, so let's see what we got going on in chat. I'm going to close the poll. Make sure you guys get your votes in. KG7 says C. Dirty Dancer says D+. Links Black says, Keith, the grade you're giving the Knicks players today could be your resume for a CAA job. Well, how much are they paying? Where do I submit the resume?
Buy that man a drink.
KG7 I gave a C2 though. Let's see. Links Black says Obi will never get more than a C under Tibbs coaching and playing behind Randle. Obi is a bigger version of James Flight White. I want more from him. James White could have knocked out a 3 though. I don't remember what James White 3-point percentage for was, but the Knicks, but I don't think it was 34%. I think it was even worse than that. I'd have to Google. Ace of Spades says a C, but that's more on Tibbs not letting him get a rhythm. Alexis Destroyer says B for Obi.
But how do you get rhythm when you have an all NBA player in front of him?
Exactly. B for Obi, probably be higher if he was getting 20 minutes per game. Obi gets a D for Dunkmore. I don't want to see another year bad defense, bad rebounding, and spot up 3. That's from Jesco.
Yeah.
All right, so let's end the poll. See what we got going on. All right, so we got 48% says C, 37% says B, 14% says D, and then we have 0% that says A. Sounds about right. And then that brings us to our next backup player. That's going to be Isaiah Hartenstein. So, Foxy, what do you give Hart?
I gave him a C plus. I thought he was a good acquisition. Obviously, it's a Fugazi. He wasn't the stretch, whatever Ramrod said earlier, but he's didn't provide that stretch three that we needed. Great hustle. Drive you crazy, making stupid plays, and then make you happy. Like, wow, look at that! That was fantastic, keeping that ball going. But he's a really, really good bench player to come in. So have no problems. I thought it was a good acquisition, and C plus. He absolutely sucked against Miami. I mean, stunk up the joint in that final round. But don't put him in a situation he has to go against athleticism. Then you're just gonna show his flaws.
I gave him a B minus because he was definitely a big upgrade over Nerlens Noel. So just off of that alone, he got a positive check in my book. But go ahead.
Nerlens Noel, when Mitch was out 2 years ago against the Hawks, he was a shot blocking. He was magnificent. Offense, he'll always be anyone with bad hands in the NBA from this point forward will always be called, he has Nerlens Noel hands. But when Nerlens had a short period of time as that backup, where defensively he was in my eyes, he was much better defensively or scarier than Hartenstein.
Yeah, but you also remember we paid him and we brought him back, and then what happened then?
Well, that was only because, first of all, the guy he's injured. He just blew on him. So, with Wembayama this year, I'm not big. We talked about KP earlier. I am not big. We saw what happened to Chet Holmgren. I'm not big on real skinny dudes. So, but for a brief period while he stayed healthy, he was an elite shot blocking guy as a backup. So Isaiah had phenomenal stats coming from the Clippers, but he was a solid guy, good bench guy, good hustle guy. He's a good bench guy. And this is his last year. Next year is, last year of his contract. So we'll see. But I definitely have no problem getting rid of him for a stretch five option that would change the world for our team.
You and me both, Foxy. But I still look at Hart as one of the better backup bigs. So
absolutely, that's why you got a C plus, no doubt.
Yep, that's why I gave him a B minus. Above average. So for me, Hart definitely gets that B minus. Let's see what else we got going on in chat. Jessica says Hartenstein is a B minus. Sucked at the start of the year, but picked it up and solidified himself as one of the better backup bigs in the league.
Facts.
Jake's knock on wood. We surveyed 100 people. Says Hart gets a B. Lexus Destroyer says B minus for Hart, solid backup. KG 7 full, B for bench player. Steve Larson says, did Hart hit 1-3 the whole year? Yeah, he hit a couple. And it might actually just be a couple. Because it wasn't much, but he hit a couple. I'll see if I can pull that information up. Foxy, you want to shout anybody out in chat?
Nope.
Let's see what else we got going on. Michael P says Hart equals blame Tibbs for his offensive limits. That's true. Tibbs really has not used Hart in a proper way to get the most out of him. You see
saw it in preseason.
Yeah.
Gorgeous passes, and you're like, oh my God, this guy, like we said, pinch post or whatever, he's gonna be dynamite, maybe a poor man Sabonis or something like that, but didn't run him in the right schemes, man, to utilize that talent.
Not one bit. But Tibbs has one more season to figure things out, and then I think he's out of here. All right, but let's close the poll, see what everybody thinks about Hart. So 57% thinks Hart gets a B. We've got 39% that thinks Hart gets a C. 3% says Hart gets a D, and then nobody believes Hart should be getting an A. Understandable.
Did you see Hart's girlfriend?
Nah, I don't pay attention to their girlfriends and their wives.
He deserves an A.
Does he?
Oh, I'm serious.
She's a looker.
So just meaning it's funny when you make $8 million, how handsome you get.
Foxy, man, you are a trip.
I am a trip, man. You have no idea.
All right, and we'll do the last two together in one sitting because they both really didn't get much minutes. Deuce and Jericho. What grade are you giving them, Foxy?
C for both. Deuce, great defense. Can't shoot. Can't show that he consistently hit a midi. Can't show that he consistently, and it drives you crazy. You saw in your travels of Bridgeport, etc., him lighting it up in G League, and and also obviously it's a rhythm game. It's very difficult, but that's how you make your name. Come off the bench cold, and you're going to play great defense, but hit a few jumpers, and then all of a sudden you're going to get a few more minutes. But he's 6'1". Even with his great defense on switches, there's not a damn thing Deuce can do going against a guy 6'6". He just can't. So he's totally replaceable. But he has great defense, so didn't get enough burn to see.
Yeah, I'm giving Deuce and Jericho Sims both C's as well. They really didn't give much of an opportunity to showcase what they can do. Towards the end of the season, there were times where Tibbs would throw Deuce out there as like a defensive stopper, for offensive defensive substitution. You like to see that from Tibbs, and Deuce did step up in most of those moments, if not all of them. But we really didn't get to see enough from him, I think, to really grade him much higher than this. And you mentioned the shot really wasn't falling.
Bricks too.
Yeah.
Some of them not even close, man. So what I talk about besides mechanics, touch. It's a gift from the basketball gods. Doesn't look like, and he has this funky release, man, that
doesn't seem to drop. And he had a game right before, who was it that came back? Jalen Brunson? Was it before Brunson came back where Deuce kind of went off? And then he had to get sat back down on the bench, so he really couldn't build off that rhythm. So it's tough to really analyze or to assess Deuce because, the play time is so small. But, he's always going to come in and be a solid defender and will always be prepared. And then Jericho, I want to know what happened to Jericho in that injury. How did he get injured? Was that like him working out?
It had to be practice.
I'm like, come on, man, because we could have used him. He could have been a nice option to go out there against Bam, who's a little bit more mobile and things like that. Could have stayed in front of him, and that could have been a big turning point in the series if we were able to contain Bam a little bit more. Because he really started to go off towards the end of that series. So it's unfortunate, but for Jericho, really didn't get too much of an opportunity. He's the third center. And on the depth chart, so I gave him a C. He's solid. Decent enough.
He was last on the team with a minus 113. There's times he doesn't know what the hell he's doing on defense. And, he has this great jumping ability, but so did Kenny Wooten a few years ago. He's the same age as Mitch. He came out as a senior. He's a 58th pick, and there's a reason he's a 58th pick. So I think that, like Keith just said, he may have added with his athleticism at the perimeter against Bam, but the reality is he would probably have been good for 6 fouls against Bam. That could have taken away some of the pressure from the other guys, but I don't know how much longer he'll be in the league.
All right, let's see what's going on in chat. Jericho says C. Dirty Dancer says Jericho, C minus. Kyrie 420 says D.
He's 6'9", so he's that dreaded. You saw him against certain matchups. If he was a 7-footer, a real 7-footer, I'd have a different things. But if you 6'9", there's guys in the draft. Tracy Jackson out of Indiana is 6'9" with a 7'3" wingspan.
They call it CAA Mafia. Says McBride gets an S for sassy. He comes off sassy to you, Foxy? I think the sassy that he got that one little dance he does with the little gift that they put on social media, but I wouldn't call him sassy.
He comes off to me as a player that it hurts me that he can't shoot because he's a player's dream. He plays the game the way you're supposed to play it. He's a dog. Scouted him out of West Virginia. I love everything about his game, but out of West Virginia, I said never thought he ever could be a starter, but I thought maybe he could be a viable backup. But can't hit the shot. I've seen great guys like Thibault and other guys that are all world on defense get 10 minutes a game because they can't goddamn shoot.
Yeah. Let's see. Dirty Dancers jumping the gun, getting ahead of us. He's giving Leon Rose a B+. Make sure you write that down. We'll be getting to him shortly. KG74 says B for defense. Kaiser Soze 718 says Deuce is pretty much useless at this point. He can probably go. We've got Jesco saying C+. Played exactly like we thought he would. C- for Sims. He was a team worst minus 135 or something. We actually have that. Let me put it on screen. We got Jericho Sims plus minus. Put that back on screen. You can get
it's frightening.
It's frightening.
No, meaning you're not there for your offensive skills. So if you're a minus 113, and you saw it, he's like a deer in the headlights, man. And also he's just a weird cat. You know what the hell's going on. There's certain guys you meet in your life like that dude's high. The guys who are really scary, the dudes that look high that aren't, and that's who Jericho Sims looks. He always looks high, but he's not. So those scare me. 113, man, that's crazy.
Lynx Black says G League Deuce gets an A+, but NBA Deuce gets a B+.
I saw it. He's cool.
Steve Lawson says Deuce can defend if only he could shoot and assist. CAA Mafia says Deuce never got loose. David Smith says the front office has made some bad signings. Yeah, they made some bad signings 2 years ago. Luckily, we were able to undo a lot of those moves, and it allowed us to get to the playoffs this season.
Yeah, but that's a good segue to the coach and front office grades.
What grade do you give him, Foxy?
So Tibbs?
Yeah, Tibbs and
I give.
We'll do Tibbs first.
I gave him a B. And one of my favorite takes that you had this year is your expectations that not only players develop but coaches development. And Tibbs is brilliant. He knows this game, we brought it up a stream or so ago where we said at the beginning of the season, that you and I wanted Cam in that, give Cam some, give him a chance. And he didn't because why are you putting in Fournier? Because he's a really smart guy. He knew this team couldn't shoot. He knew from day one. That's why he had Fournier there. And it showed up at the end. The Tibbs was right all along. We can't shoot. But he benched RJ when we didn't think it was capable. He benched Randle when he didn't think. Even a couple of possessions, he left Brunson out on defensive possessions. And people, IQ developed under Tibbs. Grimes developed under Tibbs. He did what he had. So I really thought Tibbs did a pretty damn good job this year. I'm not gonna, Tibbs doesn't die for loose balls. Tibbs doesn't shoot. Some of it is on the players. A lot of times coaches, they get all the credit because the guys on the court did what they had to do. And, and when the players didn't do on the court, the coach is guilty. I thought Tibbs was a lot better this year than last year. And yep, there are a lot of decisions that he made. I'm like, what are you doing? But all in all, with the roster that he had, and I thought he did he was B in my book.
I gave Tibbs a B-. He did a good job when he shrunk the rotation down to that 9-man rotation. That really got us going December 4th. Made some good decisions with the rotations during the regular season. And the only reason I didn't go higher than a B- is because he did have some mistakes, I believe, in the second round in our matchup against the Heat. You saw him start to revert to some of the things we saw a few years ago, where he kind of, rode the vets a little bit more than trusting some of his young guys. We saw that with Josh Hart being inserted into the starting lineup and then not making the adjustment to put him back to the bench once Quentin Grimes came back healthy. You also saw some of the decision making, late in the games. For example, having Hart and RJ out there, knowing that team leaves us with very little shooting and things like that. So there are some issues or some gripes that I had with Tibbs this playoff series. And for that, I gave him a B-. But I think overall, when you factor in the regular season and, some of the adjustments he made, especially in the first series against the Cavs, I think Tibbs was worthy of a B-.
Ready for Leon in front office?
Let's see what we got in chat first. Hey Paul 718 says Tibbs gets a C-. What else? Kaiser Soze 718 says Tibbs gets a D. What else we got going on? Almighty Finesse says Tibbs gets an A. KG 7 says C for chaos. David Smith says I give Tibbs a B- because of very poor Heat series. We got a Tibbs is outdated from PayPal 718. What else we got going on? Links Black.
Brian Miller said we lost by an average of 7 points except for game 3. We didn't lose because of Tibbs. Coaches give their guys a chance to win. It's up to the players. And Ronald, to that point, one of the key metrics Keith and I like this season, including the playoffs, in 93 games, the Knicks were 38-8 when we held our opponents under 110 points. And we were 15-32 when our opponents scored over 111 points. So, so like you were just saying, the last game, statistically, we should have won those games against Miami. We just couldn't hit the shots. And that's on the players. That's not on Tibbs, man.
Links Black says Tibbs gets a C-, and hopefully next year, if not sooner, I'll be able to give him a C you later. That was a good one. Let's see. Lex the Destroyer. Tibbs is only good for regular season runs. His players, for regular season, runs his players into the ground late to adjustments, kills confidence. I hear you on
Made
that,
it to the second round, man.
All right, so we're going to close the poll. Let's see what you guys think. So the question, what grade do you give Tibbs? 42% say they give Tibbs a B. We've got 34% that give him a C. 13% give him an A. And then we've got 10% still aren't happy with Tibbs. They give him a D. We survived 100 people, says he changed the culture, but didn't change his offense. All right, so now we'll wrap it up and we'll talk about the front office. So, Foxy, what grade do you give the front office for their performance this season?
I gave them a B-. And it starts off with an A. Obviously, the Brunson signing was spectacular. A steal, great contract, everything. Hart that we just touched on was a great acquisition. And Josh was a magnificent acquisition at the trade deadline. But then, you signed RJ a year too early. Didn't you learn from Julius? You should have not signed RJ. It took away a lot of leverage from us by signing. And I don't want to hear people say it's not that bad of a contract. RJ played to a 4-year, $72 million contract. He didn't play to a 4-year, $108 million contract. So Mitch, getting paid, the $60 million contract, I thought they overpaid for Mitch. I didn't like the way that they handled, with the Donovan thing. And all right, that's not. We're going to sign RJ. We're going to sign Mitch. I thought they acted desperate, and I didn't like that. They gave up a first-round pick, which will be 23rd to Portland for and Cam. I still don't know, have to hold them accountable for even bringing Cam here in the first place when he wasn't a Tibbs player. And then that causes stuff in the locker room. You're not playing a guy, who's the prototype 6'8", 7+ wingspan and everything else. But, and then, so you do that. And then to make this team better, you draft Trevor Keels this past season, that front office. Trevor Keels is not a stash pick. He's a trash pick. So there are other guys, whether Jabari Walker or don't take anybody, trade our second round pick for our future second round pick and not take Trevor Keels. but there were just too many things that they did from the RJ contracts and Mitch contracts and Cam, and that it took it down from the A for me to the B minus.
Yeah, for me, I gave them a B plus. I think number one, you got to start off at an A for not getting fleeced by the Utah Jazz and not giving up a boatload of assets for Donovan Mitchell. We see what the Cleveland Cavaliers did. They went ahead and they went that route, and they ended up with a first round exit. And so we ended up beating them with some pieces that we didn't include in a deal, and the fact that we were able to get further than they were and still have those pieces to include in a future deal. I think it just gives us a lot of flexibility when it comes to building out this roster long term. Also, they went in and they kind of undid a bad move that they did last year in terms of trading for Cam. They were able to flip him into a guy in Josh Hart that has a long term future with this team. He fits into what Tom Thibodeau is trying to do, and he'll also fit into other coaches' schemes if we do decide to move on from a guy like Tom Thibodeau. His game translates to a bunch of different ways that you want to play the game of basketball. So for me, I think that warrants a B plus from this front office. They could have made a mistake and they could have went out there and traded for Donovan Mitchell, and I don't think we would have been in as good of a position as we are right now in terms of our long-term flexibility. And I don't have that big of an issue with RJ Barrett's deal. I still think it's a deal in which we can look to move if we ever got to that point. I don't think it's something that would stop teams from deciding to trade for RJ. If you look at us and that Donovan Mitchell trade, RJ Barrett was going to be a piece in that deal. And if the Utah Jazz were going to extend RJ, they'd probably be paying him some similar money. So I think if you look at it that way, you would say other teams around the league would be willing to pay that much for a young player who's still developing and who still, hasn't reached their ceiling. So once you put all that together, I'd have to give them a B plus.
And I hope people stop saying that Danny Ainge on Utah hated the Knicks. And I look at Danny Ainge as a really good talent evaluator, and he got a much better Laurie Marketing, most improved player. The other guys that he got and draft assets, he got much better quality than he could with RJ. He knows this league. He knows players, and I think he saw their ceilings and didn't think that. So I see Ramrod says, "Hey, you're calling NBA players trash. That's crazy. You got to get your fucking hearing fixed, bro. I said the pick was trash. I didn't say the player is trash. Trevor Keels is not a point guard, and he's not a shooting guard. He's the dreaded tweener. So it's not the kid's fault. It was the Knicks front office's point. So I never said the kid was trash. I said the pick was trash. Fucking idiots."
Yeah, Links Black says Leon got a participatory C minus. Steve Larson says Trevor Keels, who is he? Just go. The only way Keels stays in the league is if he becomes as good of a cheerleader as Theo Pinson. Let's see. CAA Mafia. Leon doesn't even negotiate the deals. It's Rosas, SMH. Yeah, I'm not worried about who's negotiating the deal as long as the deal is good. Leon, he's the figurehead, I guess, if you want to put it like that. But if he's listening to his people and they're suggesting good deals, then it is what it is. All right, so Jesco says A minus for the front office. Brunson contract, Hartenstein signing, and Hart trade were executive of the year worthy. However, RJ has not earned his contract. I'm 50-50 on Mitch and Keels is cheeks. Kyrie 420 says he was able to trade Cam Reddish. Linux Black says Scott Perry gets a delinquent. Well, he does tweet every Monday, so make sure you guys are following him for that. He does do that much.
Shout out to Cormega. Hope all is well, my friend.
Yep, salute. Thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate the support.
Want to get into focus areas for next season?
You still want to go through with that, or you want to? Because that's like a.
Yeah, I only got a little left in my tank. Let's get it over with.
I hear you. All right. Let's put it on screen. So, what are some focus areas that the Knicks should look to pursue this offseason? Oh, no, that's the Brunson signing. That's another reason why the front office should get a B plus. And the poll, see what's going on. All right. So, what grade do you give the Knicks front office? We've got 53% say B, 21% say A, 21% say C, and then we've got 3% that says D. All right. And also, this is a tweet from Brunson about Brunson from Tommy Bear. It says, incredibly, Jalen Brunson's salary will actually decrease each of the next 2 seasons. By 24-25, he'll be making under $25 million and account for less than 18% of the Knicks' salary cap. It's now unquestionably one of the best value contracts in the entire league. So also kudos to the front office for that signing, bringing in Jalen Brunson. Definitely paid off. He's performing well above what his contract is paying him, and you got to give the front office a round of applause for that. All right, let's jump right into the Knicks focus areas for this offseason. So number one, let's go big and try to get a star, whether that be SGA, Devin Booker, etc. If the star is not available, we can target the next level down, maybe a 6-8 wing. Some options could be Trey Murphy, also Mikal Bridges, even though Mikal Bridges is kind of borderline star, especially with the way he ended the season with the Brooklyn Nets. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem like those guys would be wanting to do a deal with us. Number three, another big thing we got to do, we got to try to upgrade some of the shooting talent. One of the major issues, or one of our biggest Achilles heels this season, was us being unable to knock down some open looks. And I think this offseason, we should be targeting some role players that can knock down the three pretty efficiently. Number four, we got to trade Randle as soon as possible. I don't think anybody would say no to that, especially seeing the way that he performed this postseason. So through the first 4 bullet points, Foxy, anything you want to add? Any players you want to include about potential stars or whatever the case may be?
You've heard me talking about Trey Murphy for quite some time, and I'd love to get a player before he hits big time. But you saw him, whether shooting the threes, he's the prototype. He's a real 6'8", 6'9" guy, 7'2", 7'3" wingspan. So on the defensive side, hits that three. You saw his athleticism at the dunk contest. And you've heard me say this before, the most perfect player for this team actually would be Mikal Bridges. Always flirting with the 50-40-90. You saw his game flourish once he got away from the Suns to the Nets. So sometimes it's not the superstars that change your team. It's the next level down. So I'd have no problem with all the draft assets that we have, go after a guy like that. And, I've brought up before that, they have Brandon Ingram, they have Herb Jones, they have Trey Murphy, but they have CJ McCollum on the contract, they have Zion on the contract, they have Ingram on the contract. There's a point where I don't know how much they're going to be able to draft, meaning sign. So I'd go full blast after trying to get somebody, so if that scenario would happen, I'd kick RJ back to the 2. So it'd be Brunson, RJ, Trey Murphy, or Mikal, anybody but Julius Randle and Mitch.
I hear you on that one. Now, if we were to go to try and get a star, I think the Devin Booker situation is pretty interesting. I know the Suns, they went out, they traded for Kevin Durant, but now it seems like they're in a bunch of turmoil. It seems like the owner, what is his name, Matt Ishbia, or however you pronounce it, he's the one running the show now. So James Jones, he's no longer a big voice in an organization when it comes to making roster moves. So I'm not sure if Devin Booker would be okay with the owner being so hands-on and not necessarily having that basketball background to kind of rely on when it comes to making these major franchise, changing moves. One of them being the firing of the coach Monty Williams. So I think Devin Booker is a guy that the Knicks front office should be keeping an eye on. I know there was some talk about Giannis and us potentially, keeping an eye on him and what goes on with the Milwaukee Bucks. But I think the same way, they're paying attention to that situation, they should be paying attention to the Devin Booker situation as well, because seems like things aren't as rosy in Phoenix as he may like.
Yeah, but Giannis, we brought up. If we have shooting woes, Giannis is the wrong dude to get to a team that already has shooting problems.
Yeah, well, people say that, but if you go for a guy like Giannis, that's not going to be the only move. You're going to upgrade the roster around Giannis. You're going to probably move off of a guy like Mitchell Robinson and bring in a center like a Brook Lopez that's going to stretch the court, and then you're going to continue to make some additional moves. So I don't think it'll just be trade for Giannis and then sit in your hands for the rest of the offseason. I think they would still make a concerted effort to bring in some additional shooters to pair around a guy like Giannis. Also, trade Randle. We said that ASAP. The biggest issue is who's going to take on Randle's contract, who's going to be willing to deal with us, especially seeing how terrible Randle has been in the postseason. It'll probably be a lot easier, I think, to move Fournier's contract because it's an expiring deal than, find a way to either get, the right value for Randle and not, just giving him away to free up the salary. So the number 5 would be to get a backup point guard or a floor general. I think an interesting person that we probably haven't discussed about enough is Rokas, who has been playing well over in Barcelona, has been developing his game as a point guard. With Emmanuel Quickley struggling in the playoffs as that backup point guard, maybe it opens up the door for Rokas to come over, be given an opportunity to secure that position as the backup point guard and get an actual guarantee to get some playing time. Because I think that's what it's going to take for Rokas to relinquish that hold on the point guard position over in Barcelona and make the trip over the pond or across the pond, however they call it, to come play at MSG. So, that is an option for the Knicks, bringing over Rokas to have him with that second unit and be that actual point guard. But then it also remains to be seen if he'll be able to fill that defensive philosophy that Tibbs deploys with this squad.
Who would be a better mentor than Brunson? Another lefty and a smart guy than Rokas, but very similar to Brunson. You have a second team of Rokas, IQ, Josh Hart. You can hide Rokas.
Mm-hmm. Well, depending on who's that power forward. Because if it's Obi, it might be a little bit more difficult.
Word.
You also got to keep in mind of that. And then also, it depends if it's going to be Hart there, because at number 6, we've got get a real stretch 5 who can improve spacing. Maybe you move on from a guy like Hart and bring in someone that can knock down the 3 at a higher clip. Even though Hart has been a solid contributor, if you want to add a little bit more offensive versatility to the second unit, bringing in someone that can knock down the 3, that can also be inserted into that starting, not the starting lineup per se, but play with the starters and give them a little bit more spacing. You need to take Mitch out too, so that could be a direction the Knicks go this offseason.
Especially if you're married to the contracts, you can't get rid of the contracts of Randle, and you're still behind RJ. Your games would be enhanced by having a stretch 5.
Definitely. And then last but not least, a succession plan for Tibbs. One option is Johnny Bryant. Tibbs, he signed a 5-year deal back in 2020. So
this is his last year coming up.
Well, no, he has 2 more. No, he got 24 and 25.
Sure about that? I thought next year is his last year.
Oh, well, even better if next year is his last year, because then that means, it'd be easier.
That's
for
why
us
I'm
to move
saying
on from
next
him.
year is his last year. I think it'd be a smart move to say, hey, folks, this is our last year, and Johnny's taking over from Tibbs next year. Everybody knows
it. Didn't he sign a 5-year deal?
I don't know. Hey, folks, if you could do us a favor.
Yeah, I thought he signed a 5-year deal. Because then
I'm old.
Yeah.
Hey, shout out to Cully. Definitely need a 6'8" wing. Hopefully we can rebound too, because he got a lot of favorable long rebounds. Facts. Hope all is well with you and the family, my friend. Ronald says, what about Trey Jones? Yo, with Ja Morant, do you the situation now? Do you think they'll get rid of Trey Jones, man? Not in a million years. That's their lifeline to having any sign, any chance of success going forward. Having a poor man's Jalen Brunson, Ronald.
Yeah, Tibbs and yeah, because he signed a 5-year deal. He's done 3 years so far, so he should have two more after this one. With the conclusion of this one that we're currently going through. So yeah, I think he got 2 more. So if we fire him at the end of next season, there's only 1 year left on his deal, which is reasonable. Get away with that. We can pay Tibbs that much to not come to work. The Suns are paying Monty more. He had 3 years left on his deal. That was nuts. These people. But yeah, potentially Johnny Bryant. I mean, the coaching landscape is going to change. There's a whole bunch of vacancies right now. So some of the guys that we really wanted, like Kenny Atkinson, he may get a job. Some of the other, Nick Nurse, he might get a job this coaching cycle. So the succession plan for Tibbs, it could be Johnny Bryant. I think right now he's the most likely option. But I think it's kind of interesting that we don't see his name pop up in other coaching vacancies. I don't know if that's something with the Knicks saying, Tibbs has a 5-year deal. He's getting up there in age. He's most likely not going to re-sign. So Johnny Bryant is our guy, and we have that handshake agreement. So that way, with that reason, so for that reason, he's not going out interviewing places. But if I'm not mistaken, didn't he interviewed for at least one spot since he's been here, hasn't he?
I don't know.
I could have sworn how long? When did the Jazz fire their coach?
This season.
No, last season, wasn't it?
Snyder.
Well, they didn't hear him fire. He quit, right? Didn't he interview for that job?
I don't know.
We'll look that up and we'll let you guys know next stream. But it is interesting to see that he's not on the short list for some of these coaching vacancies. All right, let's see what we got going on in chat. Ace of Spades says 2 more years, I think.
Yeah, he's right. Just looked it up. Sometime, 2 more years.
Yeah, Scott Novak says, what about Julius for Michael Porter Jr.? I don't see it either, but just throwing it out there. I'm nervous with Michael Porter Jr. in that back injury, man. I feel like we'll be the ones that trade for him, and then it flares up on us.
Rule 1, like I said, from drafting, and you never draft somebody with a back injury because it's a chronic injury. Backs never get better.
Mm-hmm.
Rule 2 is never draft somebody with a motor problem.
Yeah. All right, you guys in chat, let us know what you think the focus areas for the Knicks should be this coming off season. All right, Foxy, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, just hey, folks, SV Nation, thank you for the season, all your support, being along for the journey. Thank you for putting up with me. I'm old, I'm ornery, I get cranky, but I work awful hard behind the scenes to try to bring you, besides Keith, obviously, not only entertainment, but, thought-provoking content. And we just appreciate everything, the replay gang, everything. So thank you so much. It's been a great journey, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. This turned into a Sunday stream special. We've been on for like 3 hours, Foxy. The replay gang, they're going to see this thumbnail. They're going to say, what the hell are these guys talking about for 3 hours? Normally the streams are about 1.5 hours too, but we have to chop it up with you guys.
My bladder is telling me that too.
I hear you on that one, but we really do appreciate all the support. Thank you for supporting the Sunday streams and all the re-uploads. We really do appreciate it. Thank you all for a hell of a season. Thank you to the Knicks for a hell of a season. The second round playoff run is it's something I wanted, but I didn't know if it was in the cards. With a guy like Tom Thibodeau, you never know what you're going to get from him, and he switched it up and he surprised a lot of us. So it was a phenomenal season, phenomenal team to root for. They had their moments or whatever the case may be, but for the most part, a lot of great moments for us to look back on and think of fondly. So we really do appreciate it. Till next time, I'm Keith, joined as always by my co-host Stephen Fox. See you guys around.